Saddle up your horses. Started out this morning in the usual way, chasing thoughts inside my head of all I had to do today. Another time around the circle, try to make it better than the last. I opened up the Bible and I read about me. Said I've been a prisoner and God's grace has set me free. And somewhere between the pages, it hit me like a lightning bolt. I saw a big frontier in front of me, and I heard somebody say, "Let's go." Saddle up your horses, we got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder, God's amazing grace. Let's follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is a life like no other. Whoa, this is the great adventure. Yeah. Come on, get ready for the ride of your life. Gonna leave long-faced religion in a cloud of dust behind, and discover all the new horizons just waiting to be explored. This is what we were created for, yeah. So saddle up your horses, we got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder, God's amazing grace. Let's follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is a life like no other. Whoa, this is the great adventure. We'll travel over mountains so high. We'll go through valleys below. Still through it all, we'll find that this is the greatest journey that the human heart will ever see. The love of God will take us far beyond our wildest dreams. Yeah. Oh, saddle up your horses. Come on, get ready to ride. Saddle up your horses, we got a trail to blaze. Through the wild blue yonder, God's amazing grace. Let's follow our leader into the glorious unknown. This is a life like no other. This is a great adventure. Saddle up your horses. Come on, this is a great adventure. This is the great adventure. Saddle up your horses. We've got a trail to blaze.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRN Radio. can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at klrnradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRN Radio.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From the red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling out the truth, no time for regrets. He's got fire in his voice and facts in his hand, talking sense to the people all across this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where truth lies high. No spin, no script, just a needle in the sky. From DC and Tulsa and OKC, he's calling it out with a mic and a mission and a whole lot of clout. This is Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. He's breaking down the noise, he's cutting through the lies, shining a light where the shadow hides. With guests on the line and coders on deck, he's the voice of the folks DC tends to forget. Grab your coffee, raise the flag, he's standing tall. The white flag news with the backbone voice of the free. Rick's got the pulse of democracy. It's the Rick Robinson Show, bold and rain. Truth bombs dropping like a racing parade. From the plains to the power, he's speaking it loud with a mic and a message that'll make you proud. Yeah, it's talk for the people, talk that's real. The Rick Robinson Show, where we say what we feel. I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand, come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm, whatever weather, cold or warm. Just letting you know that you're not alone. Not afraid, I'm not afraid to take a stand.
All right. I don't know what keeps happening. My mic keeps getting lowered. I think my grandchild's in here playing before she goes to school. Anyway, ooh, that actually looks really good that way. So I'm going to try to keep that centered on the screen like that. Plus, you can't see my face as well. So some of you right now are saying, thank you. Hey, I freely admit I have a face made for radio and a voice made for mime. Anyway, we're here. We're live. It's finally Friday. For those of you working for the weekend, you are nearly there. The weirdest thing, right? So for most of my life, I didn't have one of those 8 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of schedules. I got close when I worked at Convergys, but then it's still kind of, my days off were Tuesday and Wednesday because it tied off to it hooked up to one of my now ex-wife's day off so we could do things together, which usually meant you're going to the store with me, you're doing this with me, you're doing that with me. And I'm like, can't we do the fun things on that day and you do the other? Anyway, probably part of the reason I'm not married anymore because I like to grumble a lot because it was always chore day on the one day off we had in common. All right. So anyway, enough about that. But so for the whole time that I worked for OU, which was the only time in my life I've ever had like the banker's hours Monday through Friday, come in at 8:30, leave by 5, don't really have to worry about overtime that often unless there's something major. And then it was usually they could only, that was when I was working from like 8 to 4:30. And they were like, we really have a queue. Can you stay for 30 minutes and we'll give you some comp time? Sure. I can do an extra 30 minutes of time that I can use for myself occasionally. So yeah, I never really had a problem with that. Because remember, I had come from working at Southwest Airlines from there. So Southwest was like, you're going to do 4 hours mandatory overtime every single day for like the first 2 months that I hit the floor. And it sounded great on paper. And then I got my first check where I had my regular 40 every 2 weeks. And then since it was mandatory, it was double time for the other four. So basically, I was being paid for basically 80 hours every week. And then Uncle Sam got a hold of it. And there was one time that I got my check, and with all the hours that I had worked, by the time they had chewed it up and spit it out with everything that I had to pay from the union dues and everything else, I basically made an extra $150 for all the extra work that I did. I'm like, this is for the birds, man. Anyway, that was when I solidified myself as a libertarian, because that was my first real experience with taxation being overall theft, because I got to keep like 1% of my extra workload. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, that's right. So I made this weird discovery when I was working for OU. I actually found that I enjoyed Friday much more than I enjoyed the weekend, because it was like the anticipation of the weekend was here. And I'm like, I only have to do this for a few more hours and then I get to go home and I get 2 days to do what I want to do. But what I found, which is kind of weird, is I enjoyed Friday a lot, because I'm like, the weekend, the weekend, the weekend, the weekend. And I finally have a weekend, a real weekend. But then I discovered, because I have weekends off and the world really isn't designed that way anymore, that it was impossible to get anything done on the weekends for a lot of things that I needed to be able to do. Like there was no way to do doctor's appointments or anything. Well, that's what you have paid time. I don't want to use it for that. Come on, man. I liked having a weird schedule. Like for the longest time, I would take, I think it was Tuesday, and then usually there was it was Tuesday, Wednesday for the longest time, but then at one point I had split it up too, and I don't remember exactly how. Um, because I worked nights. So by taking Tuesday night off, I basically got to spend the day with my wife before, which is no longer my wife, before I went back to work on Wednesday night. So anyway, but yeah, I've found this weird thing where I actually enjoyed Fridays most of all, Scarecrow, which was really weird. I'm just wondering if anybody else that's ever done the banker's hours Monday through Friday grind finds themselves feeling the same way. Either way, you're here. You've made it. It's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I'm glad some of you are hanging out with us. I already see Andrew in the chat, and I know I made the announcement that we were likely going to be delayed. I guess we weren't as delayed as I thought, because he's like, I waited a whole 3 minutes for you. It's a lifetime. I tell you, a lifetime. Anyway, welcome into the chat, Andrew. Again, for anybody who's just starting to find us, make sure you're liking the feed, sharing the feed, telling folks about us if you like what we do here. That is one of the best ways that you can support us as we continue to try to grow. So I do greatly appreciate anybody who's willing to do that, because I get it. In today's climate, some of you are like, I'm not talking politics ever again, and I'm not even telling anybody what I listen to, because bad things happen. All right. So anyway, so let's get in. Let's get into the news of the day. Don't forget, we should have hour 3 today. We do what we do usually every Friday, and I know some of you are like, I've been looking for this thing because you've been pitching it as its own standalone podcast thing now, and I can only find one, maybe 2 episodes of it. I have been behind again. I will be getting caught up on Sunday, because I have a wedding to get ready for tomorrow, because I am still ordained and I do still do Marys and Berries when requested. Speaking of, that opened up an entirely different thing yesterday. So I haven't done a wedding in a while, because with being so busy building up this stuff, I kind of took down all the stuff about doing that, because it used to be a way that because when you come in for the clutch for people whose ministers got sick or suddenly decided they weren't willing to do your service, you can kind of be a headhunter and charge what you want. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. I never really got that crazy with it, but it was a good way to pull in a couple hundred, 150, couple $100 to come in last minute, do about 3-4 hours worth of prep work and a service. So yeah, broke down to usually about $50 an hour, which is, not bad, not bad. Because there's usually a little bit of prep work that goes in, and nobody really understands all of that because they're like, why do you, because I had a friend who I was supposed to help out yesterday, and I still did, but I didn't get there when I was expected to, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I got tied up dealing with wedding stuff, and they're like, why is it so hard to marry people? I'm like, if you only knew, but anyway, um, but yeah, so I made an interesting discovery yesterday because I realized it had been so long since I had done a wedding that even though I'm about 99% sure I knew what it was, and I couldn't find it written down anywhere. I went ahead and called the courthouse to get my book and page number again because I used to have to when I filled out the the marriage license, tell them who I was, who I was ordained through, and then what county I was listed in and the book and page where they could find the listing. So I called the courthouse yesterday and they're like, after like 15 minutes of me being on hold, they came back and they said, "Oh, that's why they came and found me. You don't actually have to do that anymore. They changed the marriage licensing about 2 years ago." I'm like, "Yeah, that was around the last time I did a service, so that explains it." But so thank God for that. That makes that a lot easier because that was kind of a pain. Even with a memory like mine, I still like to double check it, especially as I'm getting older, because there are things that I am starting to either not remember or misremember. And despite what all my friends tell me, I do not have an eidetic memory. As an example, don't ask me where I left my keys, parked my car, or where my wallet is right now, because those are things that I don't ever seem to be able to keep track of. And if I had an eidetic memory, that would not be a problem. I just have really good recall for things that I see, hear, and read. I think partially because I learn best through hearing. Um, I I used to be a music minister, and everybody used to look at me like I was crazy because I'm a music minister in a small church, but I couldn't read sheet music. They're like, "How are you?" I learned by ear. Don't judge me. What happened to judge not, lest ye be judged? Which we talked about that yesterday. There's so much of that verse that gets left off in modern translations now because the original translation was "Judge not, lest ye be judged in similar manner." We seem to be leaving that last bit off. Speaking of unintentional but great segue into one of my first topics for the day, what if I told you that the modern concept of empathy is a lie? And since I'm in minister mode, what if I told you it was a lie straight from the devil? And let me explain. So, we all know about the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Where in the golden rule does it say, "Do unto others as you assume they would have you do to them"? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Because that's empathy, right? So and trust me, as somebody who's, went from what, this is my fourth career path at this point. So, as somebody who's gone through a lot of career paths, I've taken a lot of training and different exercises over the years. One of the biggest training points we had when I worked at call centers, and I worked at a total of 3, was when you're on the phone with your customers, you have to have sympathy, not empathy, because that way you know when it's time to cut the conversation off because you know when you've done everything that you can. And that's when I started understanding that the modern concept of empathy is a fallacy. It's a control valve that you can turn on and turn off when needed to fit whatever situation. And here's the problem with relying on sympathy, not empathy. With empathy, you're trying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Once you've decided that person is a monster, it's impossible for you to do that anymore. And this is why you have so many people, and it started through social media, that got really brave behind alt accounts and sock accounts and just started saying what they really felt because nobody knew who they were and they were just fine doing it. Now it's everywhere. They do it with their own faces. They do it on video. And then they scream, cry, and yell when something gets back to their bosses. And they're like, "We don't want your kind working here. Sorry about your luck." But that's the problem with the modern concept of empathy. And trust me, if you look it up, because I did this morning, when you look up the golden rule now, it talks about empathy being the primary driver of the golden rule, which is a lie. If empathy was the primary driver of the golden rule, it would say the following: "Do unto others as you assume they would have you do unto them." That's not what it says. It says, "Do unto others as you would have done unto you," meaning sympathy. It's not about putting yourself in their place. It's about, if I was in this position, how would I want to be treated? Which forces you to hold a mirror up to yourself. no matter what the situation is, and say, if I was going through this, how would I want someone to treat me? Which makes you the benchmark, which makes you the deciding factor, which means anything that you've gone through in your life, whether you're constantly reading the Bible, praying, listening to praise and worship music, or whatever it is going to help drive that decision for you. And trust me, I have people that get mad at me about how far my sympathy goes. But I live by a very specific and simple rule. Given it shall be given unto you. That's my rule. Doesn't matter what anybody else's motivation is when they ask me for help. Doesn't matter if they're trying to use and abuse me. It doesn't matter. It only matters what my role is and my intention is going into this. And I have always felt if I give my best, it will be given back in return, pressed down, shaken without measure. Which again is sympathy, not empathy. Because for those of you who are one of those people that shows up in other people's lives, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And how many times have you seen this on social media? I wish I had somebody in my life that showed up for me the way I show up for everybody else. It's all over social media. And again, that starts being a problem. Because that takes your focus away from the service, which should be the reason why you do all things are acts of service. And the need for the world to have people willing to perform acts of service, because trust me, if you look, you can find one anywhere. Instead, they don't appreciate it enough. And trust me, I have those moments. I have a friend who makes me say that to myself almost every single day. But no matter how angry I get about it, no matter how frustrated I get about it, no matter how many times I vent to people about it, and some of you are listening right now, and I get that I have vented too, I still show up. Because at the end of the day, I want somebody in my life who shows up for me no matter how mad they are. No matter how hurt they are. Kind of the other meme that I really, really like is the old couple that are sitting together on the park bench, and it's raining, and he's like an arm's length away from her, and it's raining, and you can tell that they're mad at each other, and he's like still holding the umbrella over her head from an arm's length away. We all need that in our lives, whether we realize it or not. We need at least one person who's going to show up for us no matter what. No matter what. Now, for those of us, our first example of that, for a lot of us, is Jesus, because Jesus is what starts changing the paradigm. Because trust me, without Jesus, the world is a very selfish place, which is why I laugh at all these people that scream and yell at me all the time because I'm worshiping the Antichrist because I voted for Donald Trump. If I were worshiping the Antichrist, I'd probably be a lot meaner of a person because I would have license to be a meaner person. I can look at everything that Donald Trump says and does and put it through the lens of scripture, and I can decide where I'm willing to go and where I'm not willing to go. And one of the biggest things that's been talked about lately that's being taken out of context is, and trust me, I had friends in work groups and personal groups and everything else that were like, why did they let him go last? I can't believe he just said that. For those of you that were paying attention, you know what I'm about to say. So Erica Kirk gets up and has this great moving moment that has basically moved the entire nation, including myself, and about 100 million people worldwide to tears. Well, half the nation. Half the nation. The other half was like, who cares? Because, yeah, empathy, not sympathy. Bad idea. Bad idea. Because if they were looking at everything that she was going through and actually looking through the lens of how would I feel in that situation, they wouldn't have been able to say most of the evil, hateful things that they've said. Like somebody made a point when she held up the ASL symbol for "I love you" she's making the devil horns. Yeah, that's empathy, not sympathy. which is why I'm telling you, we need to move away from this concept. And the funny thing is, I never even thought about putting it that way until I heard Charlie Kirk say it first. It didn't matter enough to me. The sympathy and empathy seem like they're really close together, but in reality, they're miles apart. And it never occurred to me until a young man stood up. I think in this case, he was sitting down behind one of his desks and had at one of his tables and had the gall, the unmitigated gall, to stand in front of a group of college kids and say empathy is the wrong way to go. And let me tell you why. And trust me, that was one of the ones that I missed. Like I said, I've been building my own stuff. I've been tending to my own corner of the world. I've been building multiple organizations. I think that may have been where I made my mistake. Charlie focused on one, built the hell out of it, and then started spreading out. I'm trying to build everything all at the same time. Starting to understand maybe why he got it right and I got it wrong. I don't know. We'll see where all this ends before I make that determination. But look, it's really easy to try to put yourself in somebody's shoes, but it's a fallacy because you never actually know how somebody else is feeling in a situation. And once you've started hardening your heart, once you've started allowing yourself to harden your heart to that person or to that group of people, it becomes impossible for you to use empathy because you're holding a mirror to them and you're looking at them. You're focusing on them. The more you focus on them, the angrier they make you, the easier it is for you to start ostracizing them, pushing them away, telling them you don't need them anymore. And eventually it goes into a conversation like I had on my X feed for a couple of days, where somebody started flat out calling me a demon because I voted for Donald Trump. You know who I consider demons? The people who are on TikTok celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination and laughing about it. You know who I consider demons? The people who keep putting themselves on rooftops and shooting at other people. You know who I consider demons? The people that keep laughing at other people's pain. The people that are willing to destroy children in the womb. Those are the people that need not only that need sympathy most of all, but it's almost impossible to give it to them. Because the problem is, and I think this is the reason why we have so many different proverbs and everything else. Sympathy can also lead you to a scorpion and frog scenario if you're not careful. So sometimes you have to decide if it's worth it. Because trust me, there will come a time, especially if you start trying to follow the golden rule and live the way Christ teaches, that you will be asked to sacrifice everything. And you have to decide if you're going to be able to do that. Which means there's going to be times when you're going to be called to give more than you can afford, to do something that you didn't want to do. And you know you're supposed to do it. And your spirit is telling you to do that. And your body's telling you no. And your mind is telling you no. But your spirit is like, you really need to do this. Trust me, I'm living it right now. And it ain't easy. There have been times when the generosity of people that believe in what I'm doing has been the only thing that's kept the lights on. And for each of you, I just want to say thank you. Whether it's $1, whether it's $200, some of you have at times given as much as $1,000 to $2,000. I just want to say thank you. Because without you, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. But in a lot of ways, this kind of became my ministry. And that's kind of when I was wrestling with the idea of retiring, that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, dude, you in your 20s, you used to take entire summers and schedule trips to go all over the state on your days off and preach in churches and rely on the generosity of other people to get you what you needed to be able to get there and get you home and whatever else may happen. And I did that for a couple of years. And I started thinking about it with doing this. But it's the same concept. If this is something that I'm supposed to be doing, then God is going to find a way to make sure that it keeps going. And if it's not, it'll crash and burn and I'll get a job. The only way to know is to know. But simply put, the roundabout thing that I'm talking about today is the fact that you need to stop using empathy as your benchmark. And I know some of you that are listening right now are you're screaming, you may have turned things off, you're yelling, you don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, because the golden rule says it all. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. That's not empathy, that's sympathy. Because again, it's almost impossible for us to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. We can try, but we're never going to know for 100%. And then, well, what if they're a monster and they don't deserve for us to put ourselves in their shoes? And there's where you have the modern day leftist today. Because they don't think we deserve empathy or sympathy. Because I didn't expect that to autoplay. All right, we're going to take a break real quick so I can grab a sip of coffee. When we come back, we've still got some stuff to talk about in hour one. The truth is coming out about J6 finally. And I will say I got the numbers wrong, but I was vindicated in one way. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Again, no normal, commercials, things like that on the interludes now. We just play music. I know lately I've been focusing on one kind of music. Some of you are like, please stop doing that. Others of you are like, this is awesome. So, yeah, it's my show. I do what I want. Start your own.
I was drowning in my silence, hurting where nobody sees. Had some nights I prayed in whispers, begging God to set me free. Pain and put me in a corner, I ain't know what love could mean. But he came right in my darkness, lit a fire inside of me. I ain't earned it, I ain't perfect, I just know he still forgave. A broken soul he could've lived, but he chose me anyway. I found grace when I was falling. When I had nothing, he still called me. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. That mercy met me where I am. I was lost, I couldn't fake it, but he ain't need me to explain it. I let go, he took the weight, and that's the day I found grace. Had some friends turn into strangers, had some prayers I thought he missed, but I learned that even silence got a purpose in his grip. I was fighting with my demons, felt too tired to even speak, but his word became my anchor when the storm was drowning me. I ain't proud of who I've been, but I ain't stuck in where I was. He don't wait for you to clean up, he just meets you with his love. I found grace when I was falling. When I had nothing, he still called me. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. That mercy met me where I am. I was lost, I couldn't fake it, but he ain't need me to explain it. I let go, he took the weight, and that's the day I found grace. Every scar got a story, every wound got a name, but he turned my shame to a lesson, showed me beauty in the pain. I used to chase approval, now I'm covered in his peace. Ain't no chains around my spirit, I got joy that don't decrease. Ain't about no Sunday showing, it's a walking every day. He ain't just my destination, he my strength along the way. I found grace when I was falling. When I had nothing, he still called me. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. That mercy met me where I am. I was lost, I couldn't fake it, but he ain't need me to explain it. I let go, he took the weight, and that's the day I found grace. Now I speak for the silent, for the ones that feel unseen, for the kid that's in the shadows trying to find what life can mean. Ain't no hurt too deep to heal, ain't no sin too big to cover. If he picked me off that floor, then he could do it for another. I ain't saying I don't struggle, but my hope ain't in this place. It's in a savior who still saves and who walks with me in grace. I found grace when I was falling. When I had nothing, he still called me. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance. how he stayed when the world turned cold and empty. He was steady, never changed. I ain't who I was before, but I'm still growing every day. I ain't perfect, I'm just proof of what it means to find his grace. I found grace when I was falling, when I had nothing, he still called me. It wasn't luck, it wasn't chance, that mercy met me where I am. I was lost, I couldn't fake it, but he ain't need me to explain it. I let go, he took the weight, and that's the day I found grace. I found grace, not cause I'm good, but cause he is, not cause I climbed until he came down. That's the truth, and I live it now. I was crying. I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand, come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm, whatever weather, cold or warm. Just letting you know that you're not alone.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. The Finally Friday edition of the Rick Robinson Show is live right here on KLRMradio.com. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. I want to thank those of you that are hanging out with us. Looks like we are getting close to 100 inside the first hour, so that's pretty awesome. Let's see if we can keep those numbers growing. I know a lot of you. I don't get it. We have open chats everywhere, but only a handful of you enjoy chatting. But I will say, after working in some local radio markets off and on and helping folks fill in for their shows, I've kind of figured it out, because even then I was surprised, because it was like, other than the few loyals I had that would get up, especially for the morning show when I was filling in, that would get up and call in, which is funny because, for doing this for as long as I did, when they asked me to start filling in locally, one of the general managers texted me after the show, and they're like, "You realize you had people calling in from like Virginia and, Michigan?" And I'm like, "Yeah, did they not tell you what I do?" Anyway, so yeah, sorry. But yeah, I noticed that anytime I filled in, it was the same, anywhere from 6 to 10 people that would call in all the time. So I guess maybe we are a lot shyer than anybody wants to think we are. But anyway, yeah, it's Rick's show and he'll do what Alejandro wants. I don't think so. But anyway, so before we get back into the next topic, I do want to do this because I did not get a chance to do this on social media, which I've tried to make a practice of over the last couple of weeks. I usually find the Bible verse for the day. I know there's all kinds of programs that do it for you, but I usually like to go through and try to handpick one and kind of design a graphic to go with it, now that AI lets me do it fairly quickly instead of it taking me a month to do it, because I have absolutely no skill with my hands. Just throwing that out there. But so since I didn't do it online through X, we're going to do it today. So this one, the verse of today, I thought was very fitting for Friday, which is this: "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice." That's Philippians 4:4. While you're rejoicing in the Lord, take a moment to rejoice that you've made it to Friday too, and it's through the grace of God that you've gotten there. All right, so now back to the ownage. So in case you haven't figured it out yet, our mainstream media friends, and I use the term friends loosely, are basically bleeding out all over the pavement right now, because they just they're dying a death of 1,000 cuts. And here's another one. So anybody remember this? When, according to the FBI, there were no agents at January 6th, and then they were like, well, maybe a few, but here's the distinction that they've drawn, and the article that I'm looking at doesn't really draw that distinction, so I'm not entirely sure, because everybody remembers what was said, which was by Christopher Wray at the time, I believe, that there were no FBI agents present during January 6th. So the person who knew there was some form of FBI presence took a moment and rephrased the question and asked if there were any FBI assets in the crowd. To which Ray replied, I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of FBI assets in the crowd. Which, for those of you who've been, paying attention, that's basically the closest you're going to get to an answer. But there's new information today. So we're going to go through Matt Vespa's article at Town Hall a little bit. So, as aforementioned, then he makes the same point. The legacy media is kind of bleeding out all over the place. So it's worth taking another whack at them over this story. They try to lie to us about undercover FBI agents on Capitol grounds during the January 6th riot. How do we know? Oh, the Bureau admitted it. With Trump as president again and the credibility of this institution continuing to decay, it's time to deliver the death blow. We were right. There were FBI assets on the ground. In fact, there were hundreds of assets among the crowd. We finally have a number. Remember when Ray said it was probably when they assumed, because Ray had basically admitted that there was some form of assets on the ground, that it was probably 25 to 50. What if we told you, according to the FBI, the actual number is much higher? The FBI has acknowledged it had a total of 275 plainclothes agents/assets in the massive crowd on January 6, 2021. More than 4.5 years after questions were first raised about the level of FBI involvement that day. This is coming in through, according to Blaze News, a senior congressional source said the number is not necessarily a surprise since the FBI often embeds counter-surveillance personnel at large events. But given that the FBI until now has given a steadfast refusal to disclose the level of its presence at the Capitol, the figure might still be viewed with skepticism in some quarters. The news comes in the wake of claims by the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Inspector General that the FBI had no, I repeat, no undercover personnel in the January 6th crowds. Again, quoting from their report, we found no evidence in the materials we reviewed or the testimony we received showing or suggesting that the FBI had undercover employees, notice they said employees, in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol on January 6th. The DOJ OIG said in its 88-page report released in December of 2024. Now, here's the kicker, because the problem is they didn't necessarily lie, because that's the same line Ray walked himself. I know the article keeps referring to these folks as agents, which is why I keep saying assets, because that's the difference. What we had on January 6th were not FBI employees. They were undercover informants. They were confidential informants, confidential sources. But here's the thing with confidential sources. In order to be a confidential source, they normally, and I say normally because I have known of a couple of exceptions, they have something over your head. And then they use you to get other information. And from reports that I've heard that have triggered, the people are talking about hookers in the chat right now. I got distracted. That's where that mixed up word came from. But anyway, from reports that I've seen that have trickled out over the years, the folks that had, because remember, informants have handlers. Handlers have bosses. The bosses of the handlers have bosses. So the handlers' bosses were getting ticked off because they expected by now to have everything they needed to tie up pretty much every member of the Republican Party as some form of extremist homegrown terror group. You know how I know they thought that was happening? Biden said it first in a speech. That's what they wanted. Biden was telling people what he wanted through his speeches. You know how I know? Because that's what they kept accusing Donald Trump of doing. It's what he kept accusing Donald Trump of doing. What have I told you? For those of you that have been listening for a while, you're saying it with me right as I start. Anything the left is accusing you of doing, they are already doing or have already done themselves, and that's why they're trying to make it look as if you're doing the same. Please see Letitia James getting in trouble for mortgage fraud while prosecuting Donald Trump for mortgage fraud. Just saying. Just saying. But look, but this is the line that they tread because they could legally and lawfully say there were no FBI employees because there weren't. They were using confidential informants. Confidential informants do usually get paid for their work, but that's contract work, so they're not technically employees of the FBI, which is why they were able to thread that needle, and they did so masterfully. Except now the truth is coming out anyway, and instead of the 25 to 50 that were originally assumed, we're now being told there were upwards of 275. Which would explain quite a few things, because if the bosses of the if the bosses of the assets were getting upset, because that was some of the scuttlebutt that started flying around. These people were being told, they being the informants, that you either need to start producing or whatever we're trying to take off the table for you is going to be right back on. What do you think happens in that type of a situation? This is the same thing that happened with the Whitmer Fednapping. Informants inside the crowd started trying to engineer what they knew that the bosses wanted because they were told, get us results or else. The same thing happened in January 6th, which again explains why one of Pelosi's key security personnel was lying about where they were during January 6th. Why it is that they just opened the doors and let everybody in. Why it is that somehow people got into access parts of the, or were able to access parts of the Capitol that typically require either key card or code access or both. But sure, let's keep talking about it as if there's nothing there. Let's do that. Because we can do that, right? I have made a discovery. Maybe it's in there. Nope. So they've changed how we get our names displayed on the screens in here. So I've gone through and tried to make sure that it's off for any time I do video stuff. But I've noticed that now it's gone back to the old way and it's not displaying. And it doesn't have the option to turn it back on anymore that I can find. Anyway, so that's why you're not seeing my name at the bottom. I guess it doesn't really matter. Those of you that are listening to me know who the hell I am by now. And if not, you'll find out soon enough. But that's what we're finding out with January 6th today, that there were anywhere. The new number is 275. Anybody got 300, 325? Can I hear 325? So here's the thing. This means that, when Donald Trump kept saying for the longest time this was a radical left Democrat scam, turns out he was right. So again, the report about undercover assets is trash. You can't say there's no evidence and then turn around and admit that 24 were inside the Capitol. The FBI can't lie anymore, and they don't have the media to protect them, as it's mocked, dismissed, or outright ignored after torching their credibility over the past decade. So this is from Carrier Bond. I don't know why anyone is wasting their time carrying water for the IG's office and the FBI on this one. No undercover agents, but 26 spies. Yes, a confidential human source is a fancy term for a spy. According to the IG's report, 3 of the spies were authorized. And it's going into the read more things. So hang on. Oh, come on, dude. I write for this. I know I don't write for the exact same group, but when I write articles, if there's a read more, I am usually nice enough to put the quote feature on so you don't have to. Anyway. So, yes, confidential human source is a fancy term for spy. According to the IG's report, 3 of the spies were authorized to be there and the rest were not. It's unclear what they were doing there and why these facts are not conspiracy theories. So this is Carrie Arbon quoting a report from December 12th, 2024, and it looks like she quoted it on the same day. So that was actually the post that they used to close out the article. But we now know some of the truth. Some of the truth is the fact that the FBI was using confidential human sources in January 6th. So you have to ask yourself why. Now, again, some of these people may have been embedded with this group to keep an eye on them. But that's the same thing that happened with the Whitmer Fednapping. So when did the line get crossed from we want you to keep an eye on them to now we want you to start steering things in the direction that we need for our bosses to stop yelling at us? Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that don't know, that's entrapment. Which means if the federal government through coercion or threat of incarceration was forcing people to engineer outcomes, that's entrapment. So I guarantee you there's a reason they're starting with Comey. Comey's a test balloon. If they can, now that they've indicted him, if they can get him actually up on the charges and facing consequences, that is the first domino to cleaning the house. Which is why this is dropping right now. Some of you have asked me today, why did this take so long? Why did this take so long? I guarantee you they've had most of this, but they wanted to start with Comey. And if they let this go earlier than the Comey indictment, it would have sent up a balloon too early. And in the grand scheme of things and in the reality of things, now that Biden is out of the way and Biden is not holding on to this information and using it in the hopes of, as I'm making these Hitler-esque speeches bathed in red lights on the cameras, even though there's blue and white lights on the other side of me, flanked by Marines calling half the country terrorists, I wonder why he was using those specific words. And my concern is at this point, was he even cogent enough to know what he was saying, or were they using him to inspire lone wolf terror attacks? Because make no mistake, now that we know about the note left by the shooter, that's what that was. He specifically said, and by shooter, I mean the ICE detention center shooter. He specifically said he hopes this brings terror to the hearts of the ICE agents. Every time they leave a building, is there a sniper? But again, that becomes part of the problem of using empathy, not sympathy. Because if you're not using yourself as the standard and the mirror as to how you approach others and asking yourself, how would I want to be dealt with in this type of a situation, then you've got a problem. Now, for the last couple of minutes, we're going to take the next logical step on this, though, because it's not just about your emotional responses, it's about your logical responses. Because if all you're doing is using sympathy to rule your life, then you're going to wind up in a world of hurt. Which is why all throughout Jesus' lessons, he tells you about the heart of man and how terrible it truly is. Because there needs to be spiritual discernment. There needs to be enlightenment. There needs to be the ability to clearly think at the same time, though. Which is why we are a creature divided into three, much like God. We are mind, body, spirit. Not just mind and body. And the truth of it is, if there is not balance, you will not achieve what you need to achieve. Which is why, even when I overtax myself, even when I do more than other people expect me to do, I'm still logically having a discussion with myself. And don't get me wrong, there are people in my life that at some point I've said, okay, I've done as much as I can do. And I'm able to move away from those people with a clear conscience because I can look back and see that I have, in fact, done everything that I could do, and sometimes have gone over and above to do more than I could do. But there comes a time when you discover that you're enabling people, not helping them, which is why there has to be a balance. Our federal government has lost all semblance of that balance. When we come back in hour 2, we still have BB's speech to get to. We will be talking about that. It was funny because for the first time in forever, I've seen the U.S. and Israel both go into the UN and just Bigfoot the hell out of them. And that was fun to watch on both counts. I guess the escalator apparently worked for BB. I guess they were afraid they might have gotten a pager in the mail. If not, I don't know. Anyway, we've reached that point in the program, ladies and gentlemen. Hour 1 is in the books. Hour 2 is still to come. And there should be an extended hour 3 for the news roundup. I know some of it's going to be stuff we've already talked about, but it'll be with other folks. So it should still be worth it. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Walk this road together through the storm, whatever weather, cold or warm. Letting you know that you're not alone, not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand, come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm, whatever weather, cold or warm.
Sitting in my car, windows fog from tears. Had a Bible on the dash, but I ain't touched it in years. Felt like every prayer I prayed just disappeared. But somehow I'm still breathing, so I guess he near.
Tired of running in circles, tired of being afraid. Heart heavy from loss is still showing up brave. I was drowning in silence, pain nobody could see. Till I whispered, God, if you real, please come get me. So I lift my eyes when I'm low, even when the nights get cold and hope moves slow. Ain't no strength in me, but I know who holds every broken part of me inside his robe. He ain't let me go, though I pulled away. Found me in my mess, said, son, I'll stay. Now I lift my eyes even through the rain, 'cause my help come from the Lord and he don't change. I remember waking up feeling empty inside, trying to mask it with success, but I was barely alive. People saw the smile, never knew to fight. Had to lose everything to see the light. I done laid on that floor with a bottle and pain, trying to numb what I felt, but it stayed the same. Till I heard him whisper, child, come home. And for the first time I ain't feel alone. So I lift my eyes even when I'm low, even when the nights get cold and hope moves slow. Ain't no strength in me, but I know who holds every broken part of me inside his robe. He ain't let me go, though I pulled away. Found me in my mess, said, son, I'll stay. Now I lift my eyes even through the rain, 'cause my help come from the Lord and he don't change. People think grace just show up clean, but I found it in a jail cell, whispering peace. Had shackles on my soul, now I walk free. Ain't a preacher, but I preach what he did for me. I ain't perfect, still battle with pride. Still got scars from them long dark nights, but I don't run no more. I don't fake no smile, I just run to the throne when I'm feeling wild. So I lift my eyes even when I'm low, even when the nights get cold and hope moves slow. Ain't no strength in me, but I know who holds every broken part of me inside his robe. He ain't let me go, though I pulled away. Found me in my mess, said, son, I'll stay. Now I lift my eyes even through the rain, 'cause my help come from the Lord and he don't change. Now my story ain't pretty, but it's drenched in truth. I ain't proud of my past, but I know he moved. I was standing on the edge, thought it was my end. Then he stepped in close, called me friend. Don't need a stage or a mic to testify. My life is the proof that his love don't lie. So get cold and hope moves slow. Ain't no strength in me, but I know who holds every broken part of me inside his robe. He ain't let me go, though I pulled away. Found me in my mess, said, son, I'll stay. Now I lift my eyes even through the rain, 'cause my help come from the Lord and he don't change. I done walked through fire, but I came out clean, only 'cause his mercy covered everything. Ain't about church clothes or what folks see, it's about Jesus reaching down for me. You ain't gotta have it all, just call his name. He meets you in the middle of your shame. Ain't no judgment, just his grace. You can lift your eyes till he'll meet you face to face. So I lift my eyes even when I'm low, even when the nights get cold and hope moves slow. Ain't no strength in me, but I know who holds every broken part of me inside his robe. He ain't let me go, though I pulled away. Found me in my mess, said, son, I'll stay. Now I lift my eyes even through the rain, 'cause my help come from the Lord and he don't change. Yeah, I don't got all the answers, I just got his name. When I call on Jesus, something in me change. So I lift my eyes. Yeah, I lift my eyes.
Read. Him on the silver before time to sign. Now he read. Your God can mix the fine.
I was walking through the valley so heavy, heart numb, felt like I was far away, but I ain't try to run. Had tears in my Bible faith hanging by a thread. Had some nights I ain't sleep, just cried instead. Told the Lord I'm tired out, I'm lost, I'm weak. Felt like I was drowning 6 feet deep, but he whispered in the dark, son, lean on me. Isaiah 40:31, that's what kept me on my feet. I need wonder, I need light, I need hope when I can't fight. I need peace inside this storm. I need arms when mine feel warm. God, I'm reaching through this pain. I ain't perfect, but you stayed. You the healer of the broke. You the fire when the cold gets close. I need wonder. Yeah, I need wonder. Ain't nobody really know how deep this go. I smile on the ground, but I'm broke in my soul. Praying in my car like, Lord, just speak. I ain't got no strength, but I got these knees. Romans 8:28 on my dashboard tape. Trying to believe that it all ain't fake. I seen loss, I seen shame, I seen nights of regret, but grace showed up when I had nothing left. I need the wonder, I need light, I need hope when I can't fight. I need peace inside this storm. I need arms when mine feel warm. God, I'm reaching through this pain. I ain't perfect, but you stayed. You the healer of the broke. You the fire when the cold gets close. I need wonder. Yeah, I need wonder. Tired of pretending I'm okay when I'm not. Tired of feeling like my prayers just right. I was angry at God, I won't lie no more, but he still pulled up when I slammed that door. 2 Corinthians 12, I learned in my lows, his power's made perfect where weakness shows. Now I stand on that, not feeling ashamed. Got scars, yeah, but I call them by name. I need the wonder, I need light, I need hope when I can't fight. I need peace inside this storm. I need arms when mine feel warm. God, I'm reaching through this pain. I ain't perfect, but you stayed. You the healer of the broke. You the fire when the cold gets close. I need wonder. Yeah, I need wonder. I remember them nights, my chest full of fear. Felt felt like the silence was all I could hear. But Psalm 34, yeah, he close to the crush, and he built me back with nothing but trust. I don't sing for fame, I sing for the fight, for the ones in the dark, waiting for a light. God ain't done just cause you feel done. Sometimes breakdowns birth what's I need the wonder, I need light, I need hope when I can't fight. I need peace inside this storm. I need arms when mine feel worn. God, I'm reaching through this pain. I ain't perfect, but you stay. You the healer of the broke. You the fire when the cold gets close. I need wonder.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding.
Seriously,
Hi,
I'm just
my
kidding.
name's Rick
Hi, my
Robinson.
name's
I
Rick
am
Robinson.
the general
I am
manager
the
of
general manager of
KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, special entertainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Capital steps, Rick's calling out the truth, no time for regrets. He's got fire in his voice and facts in his hand, talking sense to the people all across this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show, where truth lies high. No spin, no script, just a needle in the sky. From DC to Tulsa and OKC, he's calling it out with a mic and a mission and a whole lot of clout. This is Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. Cutting through the lies, shining a light where the shadow hides. With guests on the line and callers on deck, he's the voice of the folks DC tends to forget. Grab your coffee, raise a flag, he's standing tall. The white flag news with the backbone voice of the free. Rick's got the pulse of democracy. It's the Rick Robinson Show, bulldog and rain. Truth bombs dropping like a racing parade. From the plains to the power, who's speaking it loud. With a mic and a message that'll make you proud. Yeah, it's talk for the people, talk that's real. The Rick Robinson Show, where we say what we feel. Not afraid, I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my...
And welcome back in. We're halfway through hour 2, still hour 3 to come. Hopefully joined by Brad Slager. We'll see if maybe we can get anybody else to join in for the news roundup section. We'll find out. Either way, we're going to do this thing. I know things still are back to normal. We will be playing the first responder tribute at the half of the hour. And then I guess we're in the first half, huh? I just messed up. Anyway, did I mention not much sleep lately? So yeah, we'll still be doing the first responder tribute at the half mark, and then in this hour with the military tribute, because trying to get some stuff back to normal. Um, Normal still a relative term around here. Sorry, I know there was a little bit of extra music, but I was having an argument on timeline because somebody pointed out that, Jesus commands us to have empathy. No, actually, the closest Jesus ever came to commanding anybody to do anything was to have sympathy. Because empathy is a modern concept, for one. For two, he never actually utters the word empathy ever. For those of you who have concerns or questions about that, feel free to find one of the Bibles that has the Jesus speaks in red and find one iteration of the word empathy in red, just one. You can't, it's not there. Because again, Jesus understood the most we can do is look at a certain situation and decide how we would want to be treated in that situation and then try to treat other people the same way. And again, one of the things that I love about cafeteria Christian and modern hippie Jesus, modern hippie Jesus was a white granola chewing Christian, is they only ever talk about Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. So let me read you the full context. Because why not? If I can, I had it here somewhere. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. I just didn't scroll up far enough. So here's the actual context. To get the full context, you actually have to read Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. Just because I like how this now normally I'm an NIV guy, but for some reason I like these verses better in the King James. So verse 1, which is the one everybody loves to throw around, judge not that ye be not judged. You can't judge me because God said not to. The problem is they leave the rest of it off. So this is verse 2. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. So here's even more context to what was trying to be said. This is verse 3. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thine brother's eye, but considered not the beam that is in thine own eye? That one gets thrown around a lot too. But verse 4 gives it even more context. Or how wilt thou say to my brother, let me pull out the mote out from thine eye, and behold, a beam is in mine own eye? Verse 5, my favorite one that nobody ever talks about. Thou hypocrite. Well, first, my favorite verse of this exchange. Thou hypocrite, first cast the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote from your brother's eye. To get the full context of what's being talked about there, you have to read all 5 verses. Because Jesus doesn't just say, judge not lest ye be judged. He cautions you that you need to make sure your own heart and house is in order before you start trying to judge anybody else. And focus on yourself first, because everything that you're seeing in everyone else, you probably have much worse going on in your own parts of your heart that you've invited him into that now he's trying to help you clean out. But this is tied to the conversation that I've been having on timeline with somebody all morning, which inspired the very long post that I put out about the differences between sympathy and empathy and why Jesus never actually called anybody to use empathy, because it's a very modern concept that didn't exist back then. And the closest thing they had was sympathy, because that's the one that makes the most sense. It is impossible for you to know with a certainty how someone else is feeling in any given situation, which means it's impossible for you to know how to respond if you're trying to do that. But it is possible for you to put yourself in that situation and say, how would I want to be treated if I were in this situation? That is the closest Jesus ever got to empathy. And that's called sympathy, not empathy. And again, this is only a hot button of contention because one of the guys trying to make this point, which is plainly spelled out in scripture, because again, you cannot find a single red word ever, empathy. It's not in there. He didn't use it. Not once. It's not even really inferred. the closest word to empathy found in the New Testament was the original Greek of the New Testament. There's no use of that word or a direct equivalent that precisely matches our modern sense of empathy in the Gospels or the rest of the New Testament ever said by Jesus. And let me see, because I I can do Latin, not so much Greek. So let me find out what that word actually is, because that's the one that they say is the closest equivalent. Hang on. All right. So there is a Greek word pronounced empatheia, but it doesn't mean what we think it means. The actual modern English translation, because that's the word that's the closest one that was ever spoken in Greek, means passion or affection or emotional intensity. It derives from the word their word in, and combined with pathos, meaning suffering or feeling, implying a state of being affected or passionately involved with something or someone. In modern Greek, the original word has shifted to mean hatred, animosity, or malice, or hostility, which proves the exact point that I've been trying to make. Empathy is a fallacy. It's a fallacy. And it is why half of the country now feels completely justified in hating the other half. Because once you start seeing someone as a monster, it is impossible for you to put you in their shoes anymore. So you can't have empathy towards them because they're monsters. You could still have sympathy for them, because you could look at any given situation, like, say, a grieving mom and wife on a stage trying to comfort hundreds of thousands of people who were impacted by the death of her husband, and not say she looks like a robot, not say, why is she holding up devil horns? Because you could ask yourself, how would I want to be treated if I were the one on that stage? And it would change the entire outlook of what you said or did. Empathy can't allow you to do that because it's a fallacy. Because that doesn't involve how you feel. That's trying to articulate how you think someone else feels. And when you see them as less than human, you can't do that anymore. Trust me, this wasn't where I thought this show was going to go today. But this is where we are. Because I'm tired of everybody talking about what a monster Charlie Kirk was because he thought empathy was wrong. It's not what he said. He said the very same thing that if you bother to look it up, you will see. Empathy is a modern concept. It is a construct. It didn't exist in the times that you're talking about when you're claiming that Jesus, the guy who could walk on water, turned water to wine, healed the sick, fed people, thousands of people with 5 loaves and a couple of fishes. You're telling me that if empathy wasn't a thing, he wouldn't have talked about it? Seriously? Because he didn't. The man could literally do anything, which puts me in awe of the fact that he was able to stay on that cross and die. Because I know what I would have done in that position. None of those people would be alive anymore. Which is why I'm glad it was him on the cross and not me. But you're telling me that God, someone who was here from the beginning, was here before you and I were ever even a thought in his mind, wouldn't have said, hey, empathy's kind of a big deal, y'all. You should learn about that. He didn't. He taught sympathy, which is not the same thing. And if we were still living sympathetic lives, half of the crap you're seeing on social media wouldn't be happening anymore. And I'm raising my own hand. You can't really see it because I'm still trying to figure out the angle for the cameras. But I'm raising my own hand because I'm just as guilty. But this is why the word sin becomes so important, because I don't know about you guys, but I at one point decided to look up the origin of the word sin. It's an archery term. I didn't know that when I first started learning about Christianity. It's an archery term. It's the distance from the bullseye to where the actual arrow lands for how far away we are from the mark. That's what sin refers to, is missing the mark. And as Jesus says, we've all missed it. So for everyone who's throwing scriptures around and saying this proves that Charlie Kirk wasn't a Christian, I only hope that someday people aren't saying that about you, because I've had it said about me in the last couple of days and it stings. I didn't want it to. I tried to not let it. But as somebody who has tried to live my life in a certain way and completely failed over and over and over again, I have still come back to the scriptures as my touchstone and my starting point. Not as often as I should. I don't read it nearly as much as I should because I'm too busy keeping up with news so I can do shows like this one that have lately become more about the other than the news. But it's because right now all of this is important. One of the things that drives me the most crazy is seeing all the people all over social media talking about how what's happening because of Charlie Kirk isn't a true revival because Charlie Kirk wasn't an actual Christian. Okay, so just for the sake of argument, let's assume that Charlie Kirk was a false prophet. And I'm only assuming that for the sake of this conversation, because I know at some point somebody, if I ever get big enough, this is going to be one of those things that shows up in years from now going, see, even he said Charlie Kirk was a false prophet. Not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, even if he is or was, do you think God's so small that he can't turn it to good? Because if so, you and I aren't worshiping the same one. Even if everything that you say about Charlie Kirk is true and he's the most hateful man on the planet and the most hate-filled man on the planet, second only to Donald Trump, for you folks anyway, do you think our God, the creator of all things, the master of the universe, is so small, so lacking in power, that he couldn't find a way to take that and turn it to his glory? Just a question. Just a question. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the first responder tribute a little bit early so that way I can take a moment, get my thoughts re-put together, because we do still really need to talk about what happened with the UN today. And we're going to do that when we come back from the musical interlude. So let me get that. All right, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
It was a dark and stormy night, nor'easter rolling in. It's a long 12 hours, the power's out again. I pray for inner strength and that we don't lose no lives. Just another day in the first responders' eyes. Half a cup of coffee's gone, the first run comes in. A car slid off the road, there's a family trapped within. My heart beats like a hammer, I can barely catch my breath. I'm thinking the worst and hoping for the best. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Now my shift is finally over. I gotta deal with what's mine and try to find a way to leave those tragedies behind. So I hug my 2 children, a kiss on my wife. Just another day in a first responder's life. Yeah, we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. It's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this burden when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone. Flashing lights fill the air, broken bodies everywhere. Another bad dream is stealing my sleep. 'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make a difference, and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.
My bad. Damn it, I was on a roll. All right, so welcome back into the program. Sorry, this whole thing of it doing things in multiple places, sometimes I still get thrown off. So welcome back into the program. For those of you listening to the audio version, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about because the several seconds of dead air won't be there anymore, but I'm still throwing myself under the bus so that you know this is live radio. So welcome back into the program. And as I'd stated a moment ago, we're going to be spending the last few minutes of this hour talking about Bibi's UN speech because he said something that resonated with me. And I think for anybody that was paying attention to it, it may have resonated with you too. And that's this: giving Palestine a state a mile away from us while Hamas is still in charge would have been akin to America giving Al Qaeda a state a mile away from New York City right after 9/11. You know, it's funny because that hit a chord with me in multiple ways because he's right. There's no way we would have done that. But you know what we have done? We've allowed those of them that follow that ideology, that hate us, that are now openly telling us how much they hate us, to not only live within our borders, but to run for Congress. So I started thinking about everything that's happened since 9/11 in places like Dearborn. You know, we now have police officers in the surrounding suburbs wearing patches in foreign languages so people know who they are. That should terrify all of you. What should terrify all of you even more is the fact that they're now becoming emboldened because they used to say these things quietly. They used to call for the extinction of Western civilization quietly. Now they're willing to come out and say it on camera in places like Dearborn. They're living in America and calling for the death of America from within. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the point in our progress that the call for our extinction is now coming from inside the house. And we've allowed it to happen. So it's no wonder that Netanyahu's a little concerned about these so-called other Western cultures that are like, we need to recognize them as a state. Really, do we? Because you know what? They're cheering you when you say things like this. Is it really the best thing to have people that are terrorists that are willing to murder people for no other reason than just to murder them to be cheering you? Because I have to say this. The one thing that Charlie Kirk has taught me is I wasn't doing enough. I still don't know how I'm going to do more. I wish I had come to that realization about 20 years earlier because I would have a lot more energy and be able to do all the things that I'm trying to do throughout a day without eventually going, okay, I got to quit for a minute. And then the next thing I know, it's 3 hours later and there's four other things that I wanted to do in that 3-hour period that I never got done. And I know from those of you that are looking at it from the outside, they're like, dude, you're doing this stuff all the time. You're on somewhere. You're on somebody else's show. You're doing your own shows. I get it. But there's still more that I want to do. I feel like there's more that I need to do, especially now. Because we're now starting to see exactly how bad all of this has gotten. I mean, Trump bodied the entire United Nations Assembly the other day after they were acting like a bunch of junior high kids. Now, in years past, if they had decided to try to do something like that, the person that was there wouldn't have said a word about it and done what they needed to do and left. Donald Trump called them out for it because they deserve to be called out for it. The left reveled in the fact that he was called out for it. You know who wouldn't have said anything about the escalator? Joe Biden. He would have just gone. And you know what? Sometimes when people are being that juvenile, they deserve and need to be called out. And again, it's funny. The escalator worked for Bibi. Maybe the guy who shut off the escalator got a golden pager and he wasn't so sure if he should do it anymore. But the one thing that I will say, and I know I said this earlier in the program, it's really nice to see the beacons of Western civilization, the two that remain, because it's funny because, Israel is not a Western culture, a Western country, but it has a modern Western culture. The two beacons of that remain were on the same page at the UN in the first time in 5 years. And I don't think the folks at the UN liked it either. As a matter of fact, I know they didn't. But because apparently there were lots of folks that, in court of public opinion, wanted to show them exactly how distasteful they thought all of this was on the part of Netanyahu. And they walked out. They walked out. All right, so there's some information that I kind of feel like we need to go over because there's a story that came in yesterday. So, did you guys hear the GDP's been revised again? It's been revised upwards again. They originally expected it to be 3%. Then they estimated it to be 3.5%, I think, and now it's somewhere around 3.8%. Keep in mind that during the entire Biden administration, it never cracked 3. All right, so here's an interesting point because this actually proves some of what Donald Trump is trying to say. It appears that not only are prices in some sectors coming down, they may be coming down substantially. So because the inflation data for August is in, so the PCE price index report for the month of August came in consistent with forecast, showing annual inflation at 2.7%. Yes, still too high in my opinion. We have to figure out some way to get some negative inflation for a while so we can get prices back down into the ballpark of where they were before we actually had 20% inflation under Biden, which is again why I don't really trust this number. But what I find the most what I find the most interesting, so that comes in at 2.7%, and core inflation, which excludes food and energy, is coming in 0.2 of a percentage point higher. So how is it when you take food and energy cost out, the inflation rate actually goes up? That's interesting, is it not? So this was according to estimates released on Friday by the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. Consumer spending came in slightly higher than expected in August, rising 0.6 of a percentage point, and personal incomes were up by 0.4 of a percent last month. So both of those figures, just so you know, are in current dollars, which means what it means. So that means inflation is actually remaining low, not as low as we want it to be, but it's still relatively low, especially when they're screaming and yelling about how anytime now the real numbers are going to come in because of these tariffs. And remember how they kept telling you that, oh, it's going to crash our economy because people are going to stop spending money and they're going to do this and they're going to do that and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Guess what? Spending is up. You know why spending is up? Because people are starting to find that they have more money in their pockets than they used to. Maybe certain things are costing them a little bit more, but the things that they have to buy all the time, like gas, are not. These are some of the lowest gas prices we've seen since COVID, and nobody's talking about them anymore. Now, of course, they'll show you the $4 and $5 signs that are on the coast, but that's not because of the wholesale price index. That's because of all the extra taxes and additive prices that get added in. Yeah, so our good friend Delaney from X makes a great point from the post that I posted earlier from Disclosed TV. So and he asked this question, and honestly, it didn't occur to me, which is why I'm saying it's a great point. He's like, and that's just the FBI. How many DHS were there in total? How many feds, and what exactly were they doing? So yeah, those are all really great points, Delaney. Thank you for contributing to the show through X. I appreciate that. In case you're listening, I know sometimes you listen on replays later. But I do know a lot of my folks that love the work we do here at KLR Radio don't always tune in for the political stuff, but they tune in for everything else. So he may or may not hear that one. So let's take a look at this because it's piqued my interest. So apparently, a Lib reporter has said something interesting regarding Latino kids in ICE. So let's see what we can find out what that is. So it looks like it was Mexican American journalist Maria Hinosa compared Latino children in the U.S. to Jewish children during the Holocaust, saying some fear abduction and death like Anne Frank. Oh, good Lord. So this apparently happened during MSDNC's The Weekend. Co-host Eugene Daniels argued that callousness is the common factor in how the Trump administration carries out its policies in cities across America. He turned to Hinosa, founder of Futuro Media, asking about the psychological toll the policies have on Black and Latino communities. And she said, I quote, I posted actually right after the first day on the ground in Chicago. I posted about the fact that there are little Anne Franks, right? She said, Anne Frank in Chicago. Her name is Anita Franco, and she is terrified. And she continues, I grew up in the city of Chicago. I'm a proud Mexican immigrant from Mexico City, but the south side of Chicago is my home. And what's really important in terms of what the relationship that you were saying about our history is the Black and Latino unity in the city of Chicago will only grow thanks to Donald Trump and his Republican Party. So that is something that he and his Republican Party has feared, the unity of Black and brown people coming together. Sure. So needless to say, she might be a few fries short of a Happy Meal because it appears she has no idea what she's talking about. Black and brown people, especially men, voted for Donald Trump in historic numbers in 2024, Chiquita. They don't want illegal aliens running wild either. They sure don't want them dropped into Chicago. Because remember, pre-election, there were folks showing up to town meetings in Chicago and city meetings, in the Chicago area, and actual city council meetings in Chicago. Black women and Black men wearing red Trump shirts and red Trump hats saying, why are you guys giving all of this stuff to these people who came here illegally when we're starving? So I think they missed the mark again. I could be wrong, but I think that they missed the mark again. All right, so we're going to do things a little bit differently because I've been doing the format a little bit different. We're going to go ahead and do the military tribute song now, and then we'll come back and close out the rest of this hour while I try to touch base and see if I have anybody coming on for hour 3 or not, because I haven't heard from Brad yet.
Over hill, over dale, we will hit the dusty trail, and those caissons go rolling along. In and out, hear them shout, counter marching all about, and those caissons go rolling along. For it's high, high in the field artillery. Count out your numbers, let us come, trust in thee. Through howling gale and shot and shell to win our victory. Semper Paratus is our guide, our pledge, our motto too. We're always ready, do or die. I constantly fight for you. Up we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, soon to lead our thunder. And boys, give me the gun. And we dive, starting a flame from under, off with one terrible roar. We live in fame, we'll go down in flame, for nothing can stop the U.S. Air Force. From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we will fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First we fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor free. We are proud to claim the title of United States I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand, come take my hand. Walk this road.
And welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of hour 2. On the other side, we do have an hour 3. It has been confirmed. Brad will be joining us here in just a couple minutes. So, want to thank everybody for taking the time to hang out with us today. Decent numbers for a Friday that I didn't promote very well. One of these days I'll get, So it's funny because I was talking about, aside as we get ready to close out hour 2. It's funny because I was talking to my team during the memorial when all of the people stood up that helped make Charlie Kirk's show what it was. And there were, 10, 15 people standing on stage. People from the social media team to the promoters to the this to the that. And I'm like, guys, if this is what it takes to put out a number 1 or a top rated podcast, and it takes basically a small army, the fact that we're putting out the kind of content that we put out when most of us kind of do all the work ourselves is kind of amazing. So every single one of you should be taking a bow right now. And again, we are small. I don't have a huge budget. I will say that AI has thankfully helped us kind of move some things to the next level because we have kind of beaten our various versions of Grok and ChatGPT into submission and make them understand that they can't just keep using their consensus engines to spit crap out for us. So it's like having research assistants now, which is helpful. It actually helped me because the concept for the newest show that I just launched earlier in the week, Kingdom and Country, that's only been a concept now for about 2 weeks. It used to take a month to a month and a half to completely spin up a show, especially if you wanted to try to launch with all the bits and pieces in place. Andrew, I took a bow and now I'm on the floor with a broken lumbago. Maybe you should have traded in for a Winnebago, preferably a space Winnebago. Just saying. Anyway, but yeah, no. So yeah, that was able to go from complete and total, just kind of a concept idea to full blown show. Now I'm still working on some of the graphics and overlays for future episodes, which the next one should air Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. So if you've missed it, feel free to go back and check out that one later today. I'll also be back later tonight doing He Said, She Said with the lovely Aggie Rican. Also, I will not be here tomorrow night because I'm performing a wedding ceremony. However, our very own Bumpstock Ken will be doing his first ever production work without me kind of waiting in the wings in case something goes sideways. So please come out, encourage him for that, show up for it, blow up the chat because he's like me. He's one of those people where even while I'm doing it, I'm watching what other people do, and I'm like, man, I wish I was as good as them. Which, speaking of, if you haven't checked out Jeff's newest offering on KLR Radio, you really should. He ran it last night. That dude, with everything that I try to do, he shows me how much better I could be doing things, and then I start grumbling that I wish I had just a little bit more time in a day so I could learn how to do everything that I need to do to make my shows as cool as his. And then I get sad. But yeah, it's Bard's Forge, I believe is what it's called. You should check it out. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, speaking of things coming up on KLR Radio, I guess we should start pimping this because we are in the final week of September. All of October, and even in some cases for juxtaposition, the very first day of November, we will be talking cryptids. So there's going to be some crossovers. For those of you who are new around here, juxtaposition is our usually every 2-week foray into the weird, the unusual, the unexplainable, hosted by myself and everybody's favorite Circle K miscreant Ordnance J. Packard, otherwise known as everybody's favorite Amish lawyer, but it's a very short list, so that's why he's everybody's favorite. Okay, so all of that being said and all things being equal, we will be talking cryptids all month in October. So instead of doing it every 2 weeks, we will actually have a total of 5 episodes. First one beginning first Saturday in October, all the way through the first Saturday in November, because I believe that actually happens to be like the first or the second. So I invoked the extension because of, it basically being just the very beginning of the month and me not being available for us to start tomorrow. Because that's usually what we do. Normally, if it's going to be pretty close or if the month starts in the middle of the week, we'll just go ahead and start the previous. But I can't because I won't be home. So we're going to be doing cryptids all month in October. So there's going to be some crossovers. I know Spirited Books looks like they're already lining some stuff out. Jeff has already got some stuff set up for crossover work for his shows. So it should be really fun. We kind of make a big deal about spooky season around here. We kind of have to because we don't want, especially now, because, we've had Laura, a.k.a. Bumpstock Barbie, with us for a little bit over a year now, and Halloween's kind of her thing, and none of us wants to wind up on a shopping list or, some of you won't get that joke, which means you're not listening to their show. For shame. All right, so final thoughts as we get ready to round things out. Again, I think, well, for this hour anyway. So I think Comey's the test balloon, but the media's reaction to what's happening with Comey is basically hypocrisy on steroids, because they watched selective prosecutions and vindictive prosecutions over and over again with Donald Trump and Donald Trump's people, and they cheered about every single one of them. So this is Kash Patel's response to all of that right here, which is basically calling them all hypocrites. Sorry, it had to read more things, so I'm clicking real quick to get to the other page. All right, so this is from FBI Director Kash Patel. Looks like it was put out at 6:12 a.m. today, my time, which, yes, that was today. Career FBI agents, intel analysts, and staff led the investigation into Comey and others. They called the balls and strikes and will continue to do so. The wildly false accusations attacking this FBI for the politicization of law enforcement, can't ever say that word for some reason, comes from the same bankrupt media that that sold the world on Russiagate. It's hypocrisy on steroids. Their baseless objections tell us now more than ever that we are precisely over the target and will remain on mission until completion. Thank you to this brave FBI team. Mission first. So looks like Jerry Parna asked a very good question. So now that we know that everything that happened with the select committee is BS, when do they start getting arrested? Yeah. Okay, so I have to put this one on the screen because the Elon put this up, I guess, in response to the Comey indictment. Hang on, wrong button. We do have Brad waiting in the wings, so we'll be taking a break in a second. And that's not what I was trying to do. Hang on. Where'd it go? You ever have that moment when you have way too many tabs open and you don't realize how many tabs you have open till you're trying to do something and now you can't find it? And I just had it. There we go. All right. So this was awesome. So this was put up by Elon Musk earlier today. After the whole 8647 thing, I thought this was kind of cool. And I wish I would have thought about it because I was trying to come up with some sort of cool AI image. And for some reason, this didn't occur to me. And now I have a SADS. All right, we're going to take a break. Musical interlude followed by a couple of things that we have to announce because I'm trying to cut back on the amount of commercials that you guys hear on these shows since they're all over the place on the audio versions. So, my name's Rick. This is my show. Hour 2's in the books. Hour 3 to come. Brad Slager waiting in the wings from Town Hall, Red State, and right here on KLR Radio. We're going to tell you all the stuff you should be keeping up with over the weekend. And again, I'm going to make Brad, towards the end of the hour, pick his favorite child. I don't have one in the fight this week because I haven't been able to write yet, but I plan on fixing that after the show. So, be right back. Stay tuned.
Call the one, letting you know that you're not alone, not afraid. I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand, come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm. Whatever weather, call the one.
Kissed his baby, prayed each night, spoke like thunder wrapped in light. They called him names, they drew a line, but he still stood for yours and mine. He gave his breath for truth and grace. Now there's blood in that sacred place. They thought one bullet could dim the flame, but now 1,000 voices chant his name. And the silence broke like shattered glass when a lion fell. We all look back. You tried to hush him with your hate, but now you've stirred a sleeping state. From backwoods roads to crowded pews, we rose as one. We finally knew. You took a man, but made him more. And the quiet ain't quiet no more. He didn't ask for gold or praise. He only fought to save our days. They mocked his faith, called love a sin, but he still opened every door to let us in. Now mothers cry and fathers kneel. He's gone, but oh, we start to feel he planted roots to this hollow heart feels full. And the silence broke like a thunderstorm when the fields lit fire and the flags were worn. You thought we'd bow, forget his name, but now his loss has sparked a flame. From broken barns to white church halls, his echo shakes the marble walls. You took a man, but made a creed, and now we bleed what he believed. One voice gone, a million rise. You tried to kill, but you baptized. A holy roar, a sacred spark. Now truth is marching through the dark. The silence broke like God cried out as angels wept and earth shook down. You tried to silence what...
Hello, friends. You have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Capital steps, Rick's calling out the truth, no time for regrets. He's got fire in his voice and facts in his hand, talking sense to the people all across this land. The Rick Robinson Show, where truth lies high, no spin, no script, just a needle in the sky. From DC to Tulsa and OKC, he's calling it out with a mic and a mission and a whole lot of clout. This is Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in, speak up, and feel what we feel. Cutting through the lies, shining a light where the shadow hides. With guests on the line, the chorus I'm not afraid to take a stand, take a stand.
And welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, into hour 3. Don't forget our schedule is a little bit off today because I started almost 5 minutes late because I kind of got wrapped up in BB's speech. So we're still giving you the full hour, at least as long as Brad's able to stay for the whole hour. I know he's a workaholic, kind of like me. So. But we'll keep him for as long as we're able to have him. And speaking of which, he's waiting in the wings right now. Almost said rings. I mentioned sleep deprived the last few weeks. Anyway, he's here with us now from here. First, of course, KLM Radio. Also, contributor townhall.com, redstate.com. And we're here to talk about the craziness of the week to get you ready for your weekend. How you doing, Brad? How's things?
Yeah, it's been a full week, hasn't it? It's been the usual mayhem as we see all across the landscape, but we're here. We're having fun. We're enjoying it.
I can't even really say it's the usual mayhem anymore because now it seems like we've gone into this newer high gear of mayhem that I didn't even know we had. So,
yeah, there's it's just kind of funny to watch the ebb and flow in the media over what they're concerned with and what they don't concern themselves with. It's all rather revealing, but you gotta keep tabs on all sides because they don't, is what it comes down to.
Well, I mean, and this is something I talked about earlier today. I have, as much as some people will call me out for this, I'm just going to say it. I am starting to thoroughly enjoy our mainstream media dying a death of 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, they're doing it to themselves. And I talk about it frequently too at my podcast at Red State, where they kind of recognize there's a problem, but they refuse to do anything to address it. They just keep doing whatever undermines them, their credibility, their believability. And as a result, I mean, the polls show every time a poll comes out, their trustworthiness with the general public just continues to slide and continues to go down, and they don't want to fix it. So
well, yeah, I mean,
all we can do is sit there and tabulate their mistakes as they make them.
Well, the thing about this, and this is part of what I find the most interesting, is they're willing to admit that there is some kind of mistake, but they still think that the mistake has something to do with us and not them.
Right. Yeah. It's those people on the right that keep demonizing the press. I mean, I love it when PolitiFact especially comes out and, they just start whining that, they keep attacking us and our writers and they keep telling us, all these mean things. It's like, facts aren't mean. We're showing you not doing your job, but they bitch and moan about it when they get called out. It's just as lame and pathetic as it gets.
Yeah. So I love this part, right? So this is, so the not only the media, but the grade checks have started. I think media, we need to come up. Musk should give those of us in the media some sort of different color check because you've got the gold checks for the businesses, you've got the gray checks for the government folks. I think maybe the different leanings of media need different colored checks too, so they're easily involved. But that was a bit of a sidetrack because I found this earlier. So apparently Hakeem Jeffries has made the statement that anyone involved in the Comey indictment will face accountability. Isn't that what we're trying to do, is to get Comey to face accountability?
Yeah, and this is as they're bitching and moaning about lawfare being used by those in authority. Just that one of my favorite narratives all this week, especially in the last couple of days with Comey, has been, this is revenge, this is retribution, that's all this is. And I keep asking people, and I never get the answer. I keep asking them, revenge for what? Retribution from what? And they don't want to address that.
Yeah, they never answer that question because I've just started at it. It's funny because it reminds me, and this occurred to me last night. You remember the scene in Super Troopers where they've pulled the kid over and they keep asking him if they know why he's been stopped, and he's like, for littering, and they're like, littering and littering and littering and. And that's how I felt the last couple of days, especially as this, because we've known this has been coming for a few days. We didn't know when they were exactly going to announce it. But anytime it came up, they're always like, this is revenge, revenge for. Why would he be seeking revenge if you guys have done nothing wrong?
Well, that's there's a willing blind spot in all of that coverage because they're trying to say that it's unprecedented to see a president do this. And it's like, where you been the last 4 years? How was your vacation? I said that to Ken Delaney last night, where, we're going down a slippery slope when a president can start targeting their opposition. It's like, yeah, where'd that inspiration come from? I'm just yes.
Were you in a coma the entire time Joe Biden was in office? Do you not remember the nostrils flaring, spittle inflected speech while he's flanked by American flags and Marines bathed in red light, talking about how half the country are a threat to democracy, looking very much like Hitler, only needing the stash?
Yeah, they I think it was MSNBC yesterday. They were addressing this very issue and talking about, well, we're going down a road that we've never been down before. And the way it was presented, this clip was, this is deeply fundamental issue we have to cover. It's like, if they didn't bring up Trump facing 4 indictments in the course of this discussion with Chris Murphy, then the entire discussion has to get ash canned, because they're making it sound like nothing of this manner has ever taken place before. And it's like, who are you talking about? Think about it, you idiots.
Oh, well, the funny thing is, and I really am starting to think that the Comey indictment may be just the first of many dominoes to fall. I think he may be the test case to see whether or not they're going to be able to pull this stuff off, because I find it funny that the day after the Comey indictment gets announced, all of this stuff starts coming out about J6 and how there were hundreds of plainclothes assets in the crowd during January.
Yeah.
Not a few, hundreds. And our good friend Delaney makes an excellent point on X, and I touched on this earlier, is, okay, so now we know how many people from the FBI were there. What about DHS? How many feds total were in the crowd? That's the question I want answered. That's actually a really good question, because it didn't even occur to me until he asked it. But the funny thing is, seeing all these things that they kept, no, that's impossible. There's no way that happened. This is a conspiracy theory. Those of us that peddle in conspiracy theories have been batting 1,000 for the last 5 years or so. Hate to tell you.
Well, I will only a slight correction and say we're not trafficking in conspiracy theories. We were just accused of doing so. It's not like we're having secret meetings in someone's basement and filtering through evidence and discarding stuff that's inconvenient. It's like, well, wait, no, this actually happened.
Yeah. So and my word choice was to basically mirror their perception of it. But I would like to point out that you just clarified a point that actually was happening from the other side. Secret meetings, filtering through information and discarding what they didn't want to use. That happened with the J6 committee. Like, on the way out the door, they were They were feeding the paper to the shredder faster than a 4-year-old wants their 4-piece chicken nugget from McDonald's.
Well, it was kind of amusing too when the Republicans just said that they're going to call a second J6 meeting investigation. They're going to bring one up, and they've allowed the Democrats to put their people in there, including Eric Swalwell, and they said, "Oh, they're not going to like it because we're going to bring the facts and we're going to bring the evidence." And they didn't even realize that the answer to that is, why didn't you do that in the first J6 committee investigation? Like, what are you sitting on that you didn't include?
Oh, but that's just it. I mean, this goes all the way back to the Whitmer kidnapping, which was eventually, determined to be heavily influenced by the feds. This is the part that they didn't want us talking about, because this is the memos that were starting to come down, and I've seen a few of them that have trickled out over the last few years, because when you come to terms with the fact that it wasn't actually anybody directly on the FBI's payroll that was in the crowd for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there were probably a couple of handlers there. But most of what they talked about, and how not Comey, but Ray got away with saying there were no paid FBI, there were no people on the FBI's payroll in the crowd, is because the people that were in the crowd weren't technically on the payroll. They were contractors, because a lot of confidential informants actually do get paid for their work. But that's what they were. They were confidential informants. Especially for the feds, though. Normally how you become a confidential informant is they have something massive hanging over your head, and they're able to say, you get us what we need, and this goes away for you, and we'll also kick a little bit to you here and there. But what started happening is so of course there was the CI, then there was the handlers, then there was the handlers' bosses, and then the handlers' bosses have bosses. And then the bosses of those bosses were getting mad because they were shelling out all this time and resource and money on human intelligence that wasn't yielding anything. So emails started coming down the chain. Either these people get us what we're looking for, or they're going to start having their charges reinstated. As a confidential informant, that would trigger in me by any means necessary is now an option, which is exactly what happened in the Whitmer Fednapping case. And now we're starting to find out exactly why everything that happened with J6 happened in the fashion that it did, because they were in by any means necessary mode because they were looking out for themselves.
Sure. Not too surprising. I mean, there's all kinds of indicators of, at least, and it's not conspiracy. It's just things that have cropped up that warrants asking questions to get answers. I mean, look at the case of Ray Epps, who is on camera pointing at the building and telling people go charge in there. One of the most blatant examples of somebody instigating the riot, and never charged him. And it's like a grandmother can walk through the rotunda and take photographs and she's on the hook for 6 months. I'm
Right.
sorry. I've got a little bit of a problem with those two divergent examples.
And it's just crazy. I mean, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that they thought that we were never going to find out.
Yeah. And then I think it was just before the inaugural. I think a story came out like from ABC News, and they were saying that there's no evidence whatsoever that the FBI was in the crowd, and now we actually have documentation that was the case.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
how do you come up with these two results in a matter of like 8-9 months? They go from a probe showed no evidence at all, and now we have physical evidence showing they were there.
Well, and that's part of it, right, though, because the media and even our government, in most cases, up until power changed hands again, was still operating as if they were the ones that had control of all the flow of information, because for the longest time they did. Even before the internet became a thing and social media became a thing that is as big as it was now, they had basic control of what the networks were able to put out because FCC licensing. Donald Trump has actually shown that to be a glaring thing in the last couple of weeks, because as soon as he started talking about Jimmy Kimmel being an asshole, he's trying to get Jimmy Kimmel canceled. And no, not really. He's just pointing out that he's a dick, which he is. Ask anybody who knows him. And I'll get to this. I'll get to another point, but remind me to bring up Adam Carolla in a second, because that astounds me, because I didn't really keep up with him very well. The fact that those two were on the same show once upon a time and are completely different from one another is just kind of weird to me. We may get back into that later. But yeah, this whole thing with Kimmel, and the FCC going, there are standards. You're not really allowed to blatantly lie to people like this. But what irritates me about all this, and I've said this before, if we're really going to try to fix this, the first thing Congress should do is make it illegal for propaganda to be used against U.S. citizens on American soil again, because that was the law of the land for a long time after what happened in World War II. I'll give you two guesses, and the first one doesn't count, as to who took that, who made that legal again, because I'm sure you probably know the answer. If not, I do, so you're fine.
The propaganda, was that part of the Patriot Act?
No, that actually happened under Barack Obama.
Oh, well, he was, what Obama was doing, I forget the name of the act itself, but he was using going after spies. It was an act that was written in like 1920.
Yeah, so that's the other side of the coin, but actually under the Obama administration, they made it legal for our media to lie to us again.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I was misreading the definition of it. Then that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's kind of bifurcated the way that Obama treated the media. It was like that they're supposed to be there for his bidding, but at the same time, he could abuse the living hell out of them.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what dictators do, though. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who was dangerously close to being a dictator? It was that guy. I mean, what about all the videos and audio clips that have come out over the years of the things that he was saying behind closed doors about, you really want to make change in America? You just rake enough blank into the streets, and eventually everybody's going to get mad about it, and they're going to fix it for you. And then you see all the riots and stuff that started happening while he was in charge, and you're like, I wonder if any of that was intentional. That's a rhetorical question.
You mean a community organizer might have instigated that kind of thing, huh?
Yeah, he's kind of,
No, but that's the amazing part, though, is the the screeching we're hearing today about Donald Trump's attacks on the media and censorship, when Barack Obama was investigating a Fox News reporter to the extent they were even tapping the phones of his parents in their private home. And then he went after the Associated Press, and not just one or two reporters, but they were tapping phones at like 3 major offices across the country and several reporters. And this went on for months.
Well, and let's not forget him sicking the IRS on Tea Party groups.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not weaponizing the government. Nope.
So you want to know why I really think that a lot of the folks that have changed sides have changed sides? Because when I keep thinking about the weaponization of the IRS, I keep coming back to folks like Walsh and Captain Stooping, aka Bill Crystal, and all the folks that have kind of shifted allegiances over the years. I think not only was it because they felt like their grift was drying up, they felt like if they stayed on our side, the government was going to get them this time.
That's, what? Could very well be, because it's, look back on history too during communist regimes and stuff. And it's, the people that were backing the state are the ones, they were just the last ones eaten, what it comes down to.
Pretty much.
So
but yeah, it kind of occurred to me when I started thinking about, the beginning stages of Obama turning the IRS loose on Tea Party groups and starting to heavily investigate people. I'm like, I guarantee you some of these people that started changing sides about midway through Trump's term saw the writing on the wall and wanted to be on the right side for the new group so they didn't get lined up against a wall, and theoretically speaking.
There's so much projection going on right now. I mean, the stuff that they're screeching and squealing about, we've seen already from them. That's the amusing part. It's like, we can research this stuff. This is something we can verify. Thank you.
Well, so the funniest thing for me, right, is them talking about, revenge prosecutions and how this is targeting and blah, 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 blah. And then I'm looking at, Letitia James trying to get Donald Trump for mortgage fraud while herself committing mortgage fraud. And then you're wondering why we're taking a look at everything you guys have done through the lens of why you might have actually done it.
Yeah, they're basically yelling about, we've talked about it before here too. This is Alinsky tactics that are being used on them after they've used Alinsky tactics. It's like, well, you want to play this game, you're playing by the rules too. And they hate that is being applied now.
Well, what's funny about that is BZ, who's part of SHR Media, but we simulcast their shows and he does some stuff with us. Occasionally actually interviewed somebody who was very heavily into the heirs kind of stuff at, I think he said it was 2017, I think. And the dude point blank asked him during the interview, he's like, that Rules for Radicals book was written for everybody. I don't really understand why you guys aren't using it too.
Yeah, I think he discussed that with you and I a week or so ago, where, and now that's the case, because we've talked about it too, since basically the assassination attempt on Trump last summer, this title shift that came over the country where, sitting back and being passive is no longer operable. So taking action and applying pressure using their tactics is what we're seeing now.
I mean, and it has to be that way. And the thing about it is they have proven to us over and over and over again that it has to be that way, because the same people that used to scream and yell that all we want is people to sit down and have conversation with us. That's when you could use your dog whistle words and we would sit down and shut up and actually reflexively think about you calling us particular names. Now we don't care about that anymore. So now you see folks like Charlie Kirk come onto the scene, who one of the things that I've seen being thrown around all over the place is one of his most hateful statements is that he says empathy is a modern concept and that sympathy is a much better way to go. When if you look and you look it up and ask AI, it will even tell you empathy is a rather modern concept. And then I hear people all the time saying, well, Jesus commanded empathy. No, he didn't. He commanded sympathy. He never actually used the word empathy. Not once. You can't find it anywhere in red in the Bible. Nowhere. He did say...
that's the left always trying to apply biblical standards on the right that they don't apply to themselves. That's when it gets comical, too. It's like, well, you're supposed to act this way. It's like, well, when you start, then we'll talk about it.
Well, it's just, and trust me, I went down a huge rabbit hole on this earlier in the show, so I'm not trying to do it again. It's just that became a conversation point on my timeline today when I got up, as people were having religious discussions about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And one of them, well, Jesus commanded us to have empathy, and I'm like, show me just once anywhere in the Bible where Jesus used the word empathy. The closest he got was a Greek word that basically is more easily translated into the word sympathy. And even the modern translation of that word is now been transformed to hatred.
Mhm. Well, yeah, and these are the same people that can't even get Charlie Kirk quoted accurately, and we have him on tape, and they're going to sit there and quote Jesus. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah, right.
Jesus.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I fell down a rabbit hole last night watching this guy called Officer Taylor, I think is his name, but he's on YouTube. Got a huge following on YouTube. I'm actually a little bit envious of his following on YouTube. But he played like a 5-minute clip of everything that Charlie Kirk had ever said, where they said he was being racist, and he's like, "Show me just one time where he was being racist." As a matter of fact, last time I'll bring up Charlie Kirk probably for this hour, but one of the things that's been taken the most out of context is him, stating in rather succinct terms the same thing that Martin Luther King meant by "one day I want my children to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin." And he pointed out in the middle of a rather heated discussion with a person of color who kept saying, "Well, our DNA is different." And he said, "No, it's not. That's just it. They cannot. The only difference between me and you is the amount of melanin in our skin, and they can't find any part of our DNA that makes that happen. Our DNA, if you look at it under the microscope, is exactly the same, which means race is a construct created by society to separate us from one another." And I think that was probably one of the most profound things that I've ever heard somebody that young ever say.
No, it's but that's something they have to deny because race is a tool of theirs. The accusation of racism and such is they have to have that. So if you negate the difference between blacks and whites, for instance, you're going to take away their entire arsenal. So they can't have that. They need to have racial division in order to maintain things. They always claim they want to fix it, but they don't want the repair to take place.
All right. So in the final segment, I feel like we should start getting into some of the more recent news that's dropped. Did you see the newly revised GDP figures again?
Yeah, that was a little uncomfortable for some people.
Not on our side of the argument, though, because
we're not supposed to have good economic news, but this has been going on all year.
Yeah.
I've covered a number of times where good news came out and they had to spin it as bad news.
But I just keep waiting because the inflation numbers keep coming out and they still keep hovering around the target. Yes, to me, they're still higher than they should be, because at some point, if we're ever going to make our money worth anything again, we're going to have to figure out how to trigger some negative inflation for a controlled amount of time so that prices can get back to where they were, and so can the value of our dollar. But that's a dangerous thing, though, too, because you have negative inflation for too long and the actual inverse starts happening. But even the inflation data is out again, and right now it's the average core is at 2.7. What I find the most interesting is when you remove food and fuel costs, it actually goes up. I don't remember the last time I saw that happen.
Yeah, it's just one of these realities that they don't want to address in the press, because after 4 years of telling us how inflation is good and other garbage nonsense like that during Biden, that seeing inflation go down is now problematic. And they just can't grasp that. They have no way to objectively report economic news. There's always having to go with interpretation, what it really means. Like oil prices were coming down when they promised us they were going up, and then it became a problem because it was getting too low, and it's going to stagnate production because if it gets below 60 a barrel, and it's just like global warming. In the 70s, we were going to freeze to death. It has to be warmer. Now it's warmer, and that's the problem. Same thing with oil, same thing with the economy. You're not allowed to have good news.
Well, I mean, that's just it. They had to spin everything that was bad news and try to make it good news. And the problem is now that they don't have access to the flow of information, everything they've tried to spin has come out. I mean, that's just like a couple months ago when they released the revised data through most of 24 up until like February or March, and they realized that we had actually 1 million fewer jobs created than what what we're talking about. And of course, they try to lay that at Trump's feet. See, this was released in March. That means Trump's terrible. That was for most of 2024, though. And even if you count February and March, Trump had been in charge for like 45 days at that point. Just pointing that out.
Well, they were doing that with egg prices too. It was like in February. Egg prices are skyrocketed. It's like, did you actually read the report? Because those are December figures that are being reported. It's that kind of crap. And they just want the headline. They don't want the metrics.
But they're still doing it. And that's why I pointed out that I found it amazing that the base for inflation is 2.7. You take out the food and fuel, which I think is what they call the core. It's actually 2.9. I don't remember the last time I ever saw those numbers go in reverse, because normally they take the food and the fuel cost out to get the number lower. I don't remember the last time I ever saw it tick up by 2/10 of a point by them taking it out. I'm trying to remember any time in recent history where I've seen that happen, and I can't think of one.
It's par for the course. I mean, I've cracked up so many times already this year how they can't be honest with. There was one time CNN said that the tariffs are going to drive automobile prices through the roof, and then 6 weeks went by after the tariffs, and car prices were stagnant. And they said that was an indicator of a bad economy. It was the same reporter.
I love that, especially when you can go back and pull the original clip and be like, or the original print or whatever it is, and say, this is what you said before. This is what you said now. And this is, what gives. All right. So I do want to talk about something. And I know this is before we normally do this, but I do want to talk about something because one of your articles got my attention today. This is one of your VIPs from Town Hall. The one where you were talking about MSNBC being confused. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah, that was my Town Hall media column yesterday. They just they're basically, they seem to be really intent on explaining why Comcast spun them off. It's just they can't seem to hold back on anything at all. So I mean, literally, they had Senator Chris Murphy on talking about what's how dastardly this is, and they couldn't wrap their head around the fact that you started this. But then it got worse because right after them, Ana Cabrera is on at like the 10 a.m. hour. She has a panel, including Ken Delaney, and talking about how this James Comey indictment on the horizon is horrible. What was her word? She actually said, I want to make sure I get it correct. She said, this is such a dire moment. James Comey being indicted is a dire moment. And then her panel started to suggest that people inside the DOJ should start resisting, quitting, doing some form of opposition to this. And it's like, do you realize Comey is not even in the FBI anymore?
Right.
Why would people in the DOJ rise up with pitchforks and torches over somebody who's not there?
I don't get it either. I really don't. But yeah, again, the double standards are hilarious because remember, this is something else that, the government shutdown that's looming and everybody's like, oh my God, they're not even willing to negotiate with us and they're going to do this and they're going to do this. And all I keep doing for all these people is just putting the same thing in. I stopped for a while because I almost got in trouble for spamming. Elections have consequences. Barack Obama, 2009.
I mean, Comey hasn't been in office in 5-6 years minimum.
It's been a minute.
And they're expecting people at the DOJ to just like shake their fist and that's it, I quit. Then why? You're like 3 bosses out since then. What are you doing?
I mean, they might as well quit now because apparently I'm curious to see if this is going to hold up. Because it was interesting though talking about the shutdown because with the Speaker of the House basically being the de facto leader of the party, they would always find a way to avert the shutdowns behind closed doors, even if it meant giving up ground that some of us weren't exactly happy that they were giving up. And I understood it at the time because we weren't in charge. But now you've got the Democrats who are basically saying, we're not going to do anything unless you agree to this, 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 and this. So you're holding the government and the economy and the American people hostage until you get $1.4 trillion for illegal Medicare and Medicaid, PBS funding, and whatever else you've decided that money's going to go for. And now we've got the White House and Donald Trump basically sending out memorandums to everybody saying, prepare for mass firings.
Well, what they're trying to do is fix a lot of the things that were in the big beauty that has been passed. So they're trying to shoehorn a lot of the spending cuts that they favor. Here's the revealing aspect, though. They've had continuing resolutions. That's the biggest hitch right now. But they had a number of them during the Biden years when there was a Republican-held Congress. The Democrats went along with it. Why? Well, because a shutdown might make Biden look bad. So the Democrats were perfectly fine with doing that and then renegotiating, kicking the can, whatever you want to call it. And they did this like a handful of times, if not 10 or more. But now that it's Trump, they're the ones being obstinate and, of course, turning around and saying, oh, the Republicans are in charge. It's their fault. It's like, no, every single Republican is voting in favor of this. We just need 7 Democrats, but you guys are so rock-ribbed, you can't even do that. So there's no way of blaming Republicans when they are full force in favor.
They won't negotiate with us. Yeah, we're not negotiating with terrorists. You're trying to hold the government hostage. That makes you a terrorist. But I'm just curious to see if this is actually going to happen, because this is something that I said the last time, and I think this is why Schumer caved. This was when Doge was all over the news. And he was like, if we shut everything down, they're going to figure out what we actually don't need, and then they're going to be coming in with their red pens to get rid of all of it. And I guarantee you that's why he's changed his mind. And that's why I've been tagging everybody, trying to get somebody's attention, being like, if this happens and they actually shut it down, this is when you need to turn Doge loose again with their red pens, because this is a question that I have been asking for as long as I have been in this arena, and it's going on 17 years now. Why is our government doing anything and funding anything that is considered a non-essential service?
Yeah, that's always been the case, though. Anytime these government shutdowns, like, well, non-essential services are going to suffer. Like, that's a curious term to use. If they're non-essential, then I don't see what I'm crying about.
Oh, crap. I thought I changed the locks. The Boston bastard is in here. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Oh, but no, I mean, seriously, though. I mean, he's right. It's all for fundraising and orange man bad politics. But that's just it. I'm hoping now that Trump is actually there that he's willing to go to the mat, because I'm tired of us caving all the time. I understood it when we weren't the ones in charge. I really did, because it was all about optics and we were trying to make sure we could get back in charge. And that was when I was the first one that was saying to everybody, what do you expect the leader of the House to do when we keep sending in these slim majorities? It means they're going to have to negotiate. Guess what? The House was able to pass it, though. That's why this isn't on the House anymore. This is on the Senate. If the Senate can't pass it, it's because of the stupid filibuster bill. So either nuke the filibuster part. So either nuke the filibuster and ram it through, because then you're going to see who in the Republican side won't vote for it anyway, and then they can be primaried, or stand your ground and start sending people home, because it doesn't matter anymore. If we don't make changes, we're dead. The country's gone. This is the reality that we live in right now. And the simple fact of the matter is, they're so afraid that we figured it out that we're now starting to be willing to stick to our guns, that now they would rather murder us than allow that to happen.
And they're miscalculating, because in this go round, Donald Trump is basically in no shit mode. He doesn't care. So if you're going to sit there and the media is going to try to demonize the Republicans for a shutdown, it's like, try it. Go ahead. So what? As long as we're not spending like drunken sailors, we're fine. And I mean, frankly, when I hear about a government shutdown, I'm kind of happy about it, because that means they're not passing legislation and spending more money. I'm cool with that.
Right? And that's the thing. Government shutdowns aren't necessarily a bad thing. And again, when you've and the funny thing about Doge being a thing is everybody forgets it was actually Obama that started it. All Trump did was change the name. It was already a thing.
It was one of his old operations. They just relabeled it. But this is where you know that a lot of this hysteria is garbage too, because Congress is in a recess right now. for a couple days because they've only been back on the job for 3 weeks, so they have to take some more days off. But
Dude, I will admit that part does make me a little cranky.
they didn't see a need to rush back to Washington to get this taken care of because the deadline is, I think, midnight on Tuesday.
Yeah,
And they're all out for the weekend. I'm not going to panic if you're not going to panic. Is my point.
right. Well, and that's just it. Like if everybody from Schumer to Jeffries is beating the drum about, especially in Virginia because they have an election coming up. For everybody in Virginia, Donald Trump's ready to send all of you home, and you may not get your jobs back, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, for everybody in Virginia, it's actually these idiots that are holding everything hostage because they want $1.4 trillion of money we really don't have for all their pet projects again.
Yeah. Well, they tried playing this game too in August. I think it was over the Epstein files. And they said, that they clearly don't want it because they've called Congress to have a recess. It's like, it's August. They do this every year. It's on the calendar. But they're trying to blame the Republicans for sending everybody home. And they don't operate in reality. That's the funny part.
Well, that's just it. They
see it.
I don't know the last time they have operated in reality. The difference is we can now see it because last major point I want to touch on before we start wrapping things up is something that kind of got buried in the news cycle with the Dallas ICE facility shooting was Google finally coming out and admitting, hey, yeah, they did actually make us do these things. And it was worse than you thought. And it was so bad that we're actually going to start reinstating some of the things that we took down and some of the people that we completely suspended. And then they started canceling people's accounts that were trying to start new ones. They're like, no. We have a list. We'll be going through it. If you're still banned, you can't make a new account yet. And I'm like, but wouldn't it have been easier just to let them start over if they wanted to?
Yeah, I was going to bring this one up. This is rather amusing because when it comes to the Jimmy Kimmel hysteria, all of the talk has been about how Donald Trump is censoring people. And Jake Tapper was on, he was on Seth Meyers Monday night.
Yeah.
He came out and said that he's never in his career seen a president act in this bold a fashion in silencing critics. It's like, dude, where have you been? And then that was Monday night. Tuesday morning is when the Google news broke out that the Biden administration was forcing YouTube to deplatform people over COVID, over being conservative critics of the administration. I mean, that's as overt an example of censorship as you can get. Compelling a company to shut people down. That's operation. In fact, there was a judge during Biden's administration that said, you got to stop communicating with social media because they're doing this. Jake Tapper and the others have never seen this before.
Sorry, sometimes having a vice president who's willing to shitpost makes it really hard to remain professional when you're on camera. So I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but an account at USMC Liberal was posting during the Bud Light stuff where there was.
Oh yeah, I let this guy up last night.
So JD Vance weighed in a couple hours ago, and I didn't see it because it started after I was already on the air. And I'm sitting here while you're trying to talk, and I'm seriously just trying to don't start laughing. Let him get through his thought first. And I'm just like trying to. And people on camera were like, he looks like he anyway. So this is what he quote posted it a couple hours ago. And dude, I love this man. I was completely unsure about his pick at first. I absolutely love this man as vice president. So this is what he said. I call upon all of our supporters to stop the violence against innocent beer cans. And I call upon the left-wing radicals to stop inciting violence against innocent people.
Yeah, this account said, spare us your BS about violent rhetoric. And he posted the video of Kid Rock shooting Bud Light cases. And, like last night I said, dude, that's called target practice. It's not violence. Sorry. Burt Macklin had the best result, though, when he said, beer lives matter.
We should put that on a T-shirt. We really should. I'm going to get with Jeff about that.
But I mean, this is how desperate they are to say that was an example of right-wing violence. It's like, stop.
Dude, first of all, it was beer he paid for. Second of all, he target practice.
Shooting beer is violence now. But they did this at MSNBC yesterday, too, when they were talking about the the ICE shooter in Dallas. and they brought on an FBI former agent who's just, I mean, one of these tight ass restricted guys saying, let me just explain to you that people writing on bullets is something from the right wing. We've seen white supremacists do this 7 years ago, and this is where it's coming from. It's like, dumbass. This is the fourth example this year of someone writing on bullets, all from the left. Luigi Mangione, the Kirk shooter, the ICE shooter, the school shooter in Minnesota had crap written all over the guns and magazines. So you're reaching back 6-7 years for a right-wing example is as pathetic as it gets when you got a handful within a 7-month period.
Right. And yes, Sean, to answer your question, even if there is a government shutdown, all the non-essential folks, when they come back, usually get back pay. So there's not ever really anything resembling a shutdown.
Yeah, so people operating the gift shops at the national parks are going to get like 4 paychecks when it's all said and done.
Oh, come on, Brad. Everybody knows people's bladders are going to explode because there'll be nobody there to open the restrooms in the national parks.
Oh, God, I love that so much. Doge cuts were going to lead to people being locked in a bathroom at Yosemite. I just need a flow chart on how that takes place, please.
All right. So last point, and before I make you pick your favorite child, I think it's absolutely hilarious that Abigail Spanberger out of Virginia is running on a platform of rage, and how all of her voters should let their rage flow while she's giggling on stage.
This is a woman, I swear. It's been a while since I've seen somebody take a match to their campaign to a level at this woman. I mean, if you go back 2 months, she had a commanding lead in the polls.
Yeah.
And against a lieutenant governor, which is, somebody in current office running for governor, she was trailing, I think, by double digits at one point, talking about Winsome Sears. And Spanberger just, all she had to do was coast, basically, keep your mouth shut and just ride the wave to a victory, and she can't help herself. And I think now, last time I saw a poll, they were either even or Sears is taking a couple point lead. This woman is just cracking me up. It's like, keep going, babe. Just give her another microphone because she's doing fantastic work.
Yeah, if Al and Beaker were still writing parodies, I would have already sent them the beginnings of an idea, because as soon as I watched this clip and I saw a couple people posting about it, all I could think was this: despite all my rage, I'm just gonna giggle on stage.
Yeah, I think the biggest one, the turning point, was when she had one of her supporters at a Winsome Sears rally holding up a just blatantly racist sign. And then they tried to blame Winsome Sears for that racism. The black woman is the cause of her follower putting up a racist sign. But the telling part was she holds this sign up and somebody else had a phone video of it. And a guy walks up to her and he says, "They're recording you. You got to take that down." And she's like, "Oh." So she knew she was being completely racist and hateful with the sign, but she wants to stick it to Winsome Sears. But I don't want people to see me doing it. It was just as pathetic and racist as it gets.
After so this blows I didn't know about this. So this blows a hole in the argument for her that came out later, because when they started trying to call her out for it, she kept saying this was more of a satirical thing to put reference on the way things are today, not an actual racist thing. If that were the case, you wouldn't have taken it down when you realized somebody was taping you.
I'm sorry. I think the term dog whistle applies to signs as well. And that was a megaphone that this woman posted at the rally. So I'm sorry. No, your rules. It's coming right back again to that.
Yeah, no, seriously, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Now that we are, and Gene and I had a nice long discussion on his own show, because he was trying to get me to come on Wednesday night and I was pretty tired, so I wasn't going to. And then I'm like, I'm already in here watching them. And then I saw his little tagline below his name where he says, "Don't let them change you." I was like, you know what? Screw it. Put me in, coach. Because I started asking him the question, why are we still saying don't let them change us? They've already changed us. We don't have a choice but to change, because we're not just talking about hyperbole anymore. We're not talking about hyperbolic stuff. We're talking about actual survival. Because look, in July of last year, They showed us who would be okay with a politician being assassinated. September the 10th, they showed us how okay they would be if you and I were assassinated. That requires change. You may not like it, and you can determine the type of change that you want to be. Because for me, I've turned more towards my faith. I've geared down the cursing in my show. I've started playing different types of music during the interludes for the shows that I'm alone on. And I have been talking more about scripture and stuff because that's the kind of change that I want to be, because that's something that I've always kind of felt like I should have been doing anyway. But much like Charlie Kirk in his younger days, when all the politicians and the people that were funding him were like, no, 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 you can't do that. We got to stay away from those. That's the third rail in politics. So because I was trying to build something, I did the same thing. I don't care anymore. So that's the change for me. So for other folks, the change is we need to start treating these people the way that they've treated us. I don't always agree with that, but I do believe there are circumstances where that is warranted. So when it comes to the leftist leadership that have been screaming and yelling and calling us the worst parts of America and that we're actual threats to democracy, those people, I'm okay with finally starting to get a dose of their own medicine within reason. I don't want anybody doing what the snipers have been trying to do and anything else, but I want them to understand what they are doing. And the thing about it is, we keep acting as if they don't know. And that's the part that I'm coming to terms with. They know, they just don't care, because
Yeah.
this goes back to something that I've been talking about all morning. There is a huge difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is, again, a modern concept. It is supposedly the ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes so you understand exactly how they're thinking. And how I know this is after working in call centers for for over a decade, after my career path changed again. That was one of the first things they always told us. In this, you have to be more empathetic instead of sympathetic. But the thing about it is, that's not really a thing. It's impossible to know exactly how somebody else is going to react to something. But you can be sympathetic, meaning if I was in this position, how would I want to be treated? The reason empathy becomes dangerous, and the reason the old Greek word for sympathy, the closest thing they have to empathy, now means hatred, is because they were using it in more of an empathy state. And the problem with being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, once you've determined that they are less than human, or in my cases, I've been being called off and on for the last week thoroughly demonic because I voted for Donald Trump, then you don't feel the need to put yourself in their shoes anymore, which means you're free to now hate as you see fit. Where sympathy doesn't ever allow you to do that, because with sympathy, you're holding a mirror up to yourself and saying, how would I want to be treated? Which again goes back to Erica Kirk, in some cases, being vilified for, seeming robotic at times during her address, holding up the I love you symbol, and people saying that it was devil horns. That's because they were
Yeah.
using empathy and not sympathy. And that for me is going to start being one of my guiding points. And it means that I may not necessarily be okay with things becoming violent if we can avoid it. But at this point, I'm really starting to wonder if we can avoid it, because I think we seriously need to start considering how we separate from these people, because they don't see us the same, and they're never going to anymore, because they've decided we're not worth it.
For me, my change has been, I don't know if aggression is the right word, but because I don't lash out at people on the left or any, opposition. It's not like I'm in attack mode, but I am in retaliation mode. So when they do come out with this, anger and bile, that's something right now I feel needs to be met, because that has to be tamped down and defeated.
No,
And
and I agree.
That's
And-
where
and
the Charlie Kirk shooting springs from, is that dehumanization that you talked about. When you diminish somebody and justify their elimination as a result, that's the point where you got to start resisting and pushing back, because you have to let them know, yeah, your impression of me is something you're forcing on me, not what I am. And that's where facts and countering them with reality has to come into play. A couple times this week, I've had people jump at me and tell me what I believe. Oh, you're MAGA. Oh, you're this, and you believe that. And it's like, show me where I've said that. And that's where you could just right there see them getting off the throttle a little bit. Well, you're on the right, and therefore it's like, no, now you're being prejudicial and you're screaming about prejudice at the same time. And this is how I diffuse them, is pointing out the fallacy of their thinking. It's all emotional. It's not fact-based. And that's where we're kind of in that position now because of that emotional thinking and reacting going on.
Yeah, and exactly. And one final point with the whole budget thing, because I see Chris Murphy's out being Chris Murphy again. Here's a simple but true thing: Democrats have no obligation to support a budget that funds the destruction of our democracy. First of all, just again for the millionth time, we're not a democracy. Second of all, that's what we're trying to stop by cutting funding. You moron.
Yeah, somehow funding illegals saves our democracy. I'd like an explanation of that one.
Oh wow! So thanks, Sean. I didn't even see this. Sean just quote tweeted something an hour ago. There's actually people suing California in addition to Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Minnesota to clean out their voter rolls.
Well, yeah,
So-
they've been. I think the feds have been trying to get those submitted, and they've been resisting to do so.
Yeah, so this is Deputy Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice. It looks like it's Michael Gates. But yeah, he posted 22 hours ago that they're suing several states to clean out their voter rolls, which our good friend, who I lovingly call the Boston Bastage, says the fact that there has to be a lawsuit to clean voter rolls tells you how bad voter rolls are intentionally.
Yeah,
So,
they don't want it. They don't want it revealed who's on the voter rolls. Is what it comes down to as well. And this actually springs off of the budget battle taking place right now, because Hakeem Jeffries came out last night and tried to say that there's no evidence at all that illegal aliens are collecting Medicaid. And I just had to remind him, it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago that his party was screaming because ICE officials were asking for Medicaid rolls so they could determine who's on them that's an illegal alien, and they can pinpoint where they're at.
which begs the question: if nobody's receiving it, why were you throwing a fit?
Yeah, it was like, how are you saying they don't receive the benefits, but you don't want us to look into your records showing what benefits they're getting and where?
But again, if they're not getting them, why do we not need the records? Anyway, all right. So we have come to this point, sir. I know we already touched on one of your pieces, so I may have already thrown your favorite child of the week under the bus. But what was your favorite article this week?
Well, it was actually, I did one. I included the Google part of it, but it was basically a rendition of the major news stories that the press doesn't want to cover, and that was one of them. And so the other, if you recall, last Friday, the big news, and was all across the media for the weekend, was the shooting that took place at the ABC affiliate in California.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And the press loved it. Everyone was, oh my gosh, can you believe this? And Jimmy Kimmel, and now they're shooting the affiliates. And then they come to find out the guy that did it is a hyper leftist.
Yeah, used to be like a big muckety muck in some teachers union or something, I think.
Yeah, he was a lobbyist for the teachers union, donated to multiple Democrat candidates. His timeline was like Trump derangement syndrome on steroids. And as soon as all of this was realized, you didn't see another mention in the press about this shooting at all. It was amazing to watch them drop the ball. But my favorite probably is this one related. It was when Trump came out and declared that Antifa is a domestic terrorist group on Monday. And there were so many people in the press saying, oh, how can he do this? We don't even know what Antifa is. It's just a thought. It's a concept. As Antifa is attacking an ICE facility in Eugene, Oregon.
Right.
And then Chuck Todd comes out on Chris Eliz's show, and he's like, this amorphous thing. I don't even know what it is. He's on camera on Meet the Press and MSNBC interviewing the guy that wrote the Antifa handbook and detailing the organization, how it was founded, what their belief set is. Chuck Todd acknowledged that they're a very left-wing organization, his words. And now here he is years later pretending he's never even heard of it.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, if you actually research where the name Antifa comes from, it was an opposition party to the Nazi party that wanted control instead, if you translate it to its original German.
Yeah, it wasn't anti-fascist. It's we want to be the fascists, not you.
Pretty much.
And if you look at all the iconography that Antifa uses, it's all derived from the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
They're just repurposing a lot of their logos and such. So you could track this down, Chuck, if you take, 30 seconds of time, if you really wanted to. And that's the key right there. You don't want to, because Trump said something. We have to knee-jerk oppose him. So I'll oppose myself in the process, I guess.
Yeah. Well, of course, but that's the funny part, is watching them step all over themselves to oppose him, and then they realize that they're actually opposing something that they originally stood for. They're like, oh crap. But yeah, that's the lack of, thought process of the average.
Well, in my column, one of my categories, I call it pathological media amnesia, because they just completely it cracks me up how many times I see this in the press where they don't even recall how they took an opposite position in their reporting or punditry in the past. It's like, how does Donald Trump do this? It's like, well, remember when you promoted it? Oh, wait, you don't. That's too amusing.
All right. So as we do have to start winding things down, unfortunately, because this hour went by really fast and it's been a lot of fun, where can folks find you?
Well, as I said, over at Town Hall with my daily column there. I'm also on the front page of Red State. I've got a twice weekly podcast there I call Liable Sources, where I go into more detail about the problems in the press. And of course, right here at KLRN, Thursday nights, I got a alternate between two entertainment shows, Disasters in the Making, which is bad movies, or Culture Shift, where we cover entertainment. On Tuesday nights, we got our kind of fun sports news show called The Cocktail Lounge with Aggie Rican. And if you head over to Jitter, you'll see me antagonizing the press at Martini Shark.
All right. All right. Well, folks, as far as for me, you can find me right here on X almost every day, streaming right here from both my account and KLRN Radio. My account's at Radivik73. The other is at KLRN Radio. I will be off tomorrow night because I am going to be officiating a wedding. But Front Porch Forensics, unless there's some sort of a family situation or something else that comes up, should still air. So make sure you come out and listen to them and support that, because that's going to be Bumpstock Ken's first official production work without me kind of waiting in the wings in case something goes sideways.
Ooh, without a net.
Come check that out. Support them, and it should be awesome. I'll be back Sunday nights. I don't know about Corin yet. He was in Britain for a while, and now I think he's working on a Hollywood project. So I think his is on hiatus for a bit while he's dealing with all that. However, I did launch a show on Tuesday as a pilot called Kingdom and Country. That will be live again Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here live on KLRN Radio. And then I'll be back to, Monday night with America Off the Rails, and then back around doing both Manorama Tuesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, as well as the Rick Robinson Show, 10 a.m. Eastern. Because as you know, around here, we do this one Tuesday through Friday. When I'm not doing all that, you can find me as a contributor at twitchy.com, misfitspolitics.com, theloftusparty.com, and I also produce the Loftus Party podcast, which does drop on Tuesdays. And occasionally I guest appear on folks like, Edge of Liberty, BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, and our good friends over at Behind Enemy Lines, where I did a guest stint just this past Wednesday, as a matter of fact. Because, I'm a workaholic. My name's Rick. My last meeting was forever ago, and I will see you guys again later tonight. Whereas, speaking of that workaholic thing, I'm hanging out with the lovely Aggie Rican on He Said, She Said, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you to the nearly 750 of you that are hanging out with us right now. But that's it. We're done. This one's over. See you tonight.
I'm not afraid to take a stand. Everybody, come take my hand. We'll walk this road together through the storm. Whatever weather, cold or warm.
Feels good when the noise gets quiet, when a voice you hate fades away. But the same hand that muzzled your neighbor will be reaching for your tongue one day. Every chain that we clap for today is a shackle they'll weld on tomorrow. We trade truth for spite in the moment, but our children will inherit the sorrow. Freedom. when the rich men speak. Yeah, freedom ain't just for me. It feels like justice when your side is winning, like payback for the pain they gave. But the wheel keeps turning and the taste grows bitter when the freedom you lost can't be saved. Don't be fooled by the cheer in the moment. That victory's hollow and small. The price of applauding their silence is a silence that swallows us all. Freedom ain't just for me, brother. Freedom's a fire we all must feed. Don't hand it over to the hands of power, or we'll all be silenced when the rich men speak. Yeah, freedom ain't just for me. I don't want my daughter growing older in a land where they tell her what to believe. I want her to hear every voice and decide, not live in a cage, politely deceived. Freedom ain't just for me, brother. Freedom's a song of the strong and weak. We rise higher when we stand together, and the truth don't need the gov to speak. Yeah, freedom ain't just for me. Freedom's for you and me.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.